I was laying around and watching Netflix when suddenly the doorbell rang. Who could that be? I opened the door and, oh my God, it was her! Ugh! Sorry, but whenever I see my cousin Zoe, I instantly feel tense. I just can't stand her, and I think the feeling is mutual. Hey, cuz! How's it going? What are you doing here? Is that how you greet your cousin? Then she shoved past me and walked into my house, followed by her driver, who was carrying 4 huge suitcases. Huh? Was she gonna... Yup, she was planning to stay here. Why, though? Trust me, I don't like it either. I wanted to stay in the penthouse of a 5-star hotel, but my parents were insistent that I stay with you. How long are you gonna be here? And what about school? Oh, I'll be homeschooling for a while. Well, at least for 2 months. We're renovating the entire mansion, so it could take longer. I mean, you know how enormous my house is. And we're also hiring this world-class interior designer all the way from France. Ugh, classic Zoe. She never misses an opportunity to brag. And now I'm stuck with her for months. Ugh, why did my parents agree that she could stay? Well, easy for them to say, as they were jet-setting across the world, so they didn't have to put up with her. The next day, some strange noise woke me up. Ugh, it's only 6 a.m., and the bickering seemed to come from the corridor. My mattress is as stiff as a brick, and how can you possibly expect me to stay in such a tiny room? I've seen bigger cupboards. Seriously, why are you even renting this place? Do you even know what time it is? And what are you talking about? This is my house. It is? Oh, wow. Isn't it a bit small? This girl really wanted to test my patience or what? Her ridiculous complaints didn't stop there, as she went on to yell at the maids every 5 seconds. Where's my Gucci backpack? This dress needed to be steamed, not ironed. Why are there crusts on my bread? Is this even gluten-free? Ew! Then she turned to me. Leah, I can't understand why you haven't fired them already. Unbelievable! I'm going to the country club for breakfast. Au revoir! Then she left. Oh well, at least I could enjoy my breakfast in peace. I was actually looking forward to school now. Man, I never thought I'd say that, but at least it was a Zoe-free zone. But school too had to end at some point, and I had to go home and face Zoe again. She was sitting on the couch, her arms folded, then she huffed out. Today was so boring. Tomorrow, I'm coming to school with you. What? I blurted out in panic. No way. My school has strict rules about not allowing strangers in. Besides, it's a public school. You'll hate it. But she didn't listen and insisted that I call my dad and get him to ask the school. So I fake called my dad and told Zoe that he said it was impossible. She immediately phoned her father. Then 30 minutes later, she told me it was done. Turns out, he called the principal and just made a generous donation to the school. And voila, Zoe got accepted. Oh well, that's one of the benefits of having a rich and powerful dad. My God, I couldn't believe it. Now there was no way to avoid Zoe. We would be seeing each other all day long. But maybe when she saw how popular I was, she'd get jealous and leave. But as soon as we entered the hallway, all eyes were on Zoe. They looked at her like a Hollywood star or something. Ugh, those traitors! Zoe spent all day bragging to her new fans. She sure liked the attention because what she did next was so crazy, I thought I was gonna faint. She phoned up her father and told him she wanted to transfer to my school permanently. Oh no, I gotta tell Susan this awful news ASAP. Only my bestie could understand what I was going through right now. She told me not to be worried, as Zoe seemed fake and people would soon figure her out, and even reassured me that I was prettier. Aw, Susan, you're the best. Then I suddenly got a text from Zoe. Emergency! Take me to the salon after school. I just chipped a nail. What? So now I'm her chauffeur? Suddenly, Susan piped in. I'll take her if you want. OMG, this girl was a lifesaver. So it was settled. Susan drove Zoe to the beauty salon after school, while I could relax at home and enjoy my Zoe free time. A few hours later, Zoe returned with this frosty look on her face. What was up with her? So, how was the salon? Did you have fun with Susan? But she blanked me. Whatever, I didn't care. The next morning, I was using my hair curler. What's wrong with it? I couldn't open the clamp. Oh my God, I started to smell something burning. My hair! Help! I grabbed some scissors and snipped it off. My God, no way could I go to school like this. So I called my teacher and faked that I was ill, then made an emergency appointment with my hair salon. While I was walking back to my room to get dressed, I glanced in Zoe's room, and there it was. The weapon that brutally killed my hair. A big bottle of glue was lying on her table. Ugh! Don't think I will let you get away with this. Over breakfast, I tried to act normal by wearing a hoodie and telling Zoe I was skipping school today as I had a cold. Then she left, and right on cue, I heard a deafening scream. Her hand was stuck to the car door. I'd taken her glue and poured it all over the car door handle. Karma feels so good. The best part was that people were walking by, so she pretended she was posing next to it. Hilarious! Thank God, after spending half a day in the salon, my hair was finally saved. I arrived home thinking I could relax from all that Zoe stress when I suddenly heard her voice outside. School was already over? Great! But wait, was she speaking to someone? I peeked out of the window, and I couldn't believe my eyes! It was Kyle! My Kyle! Then he leaned in and kissed her on the cheek! So, okay, he wasn't actually mine yet. But still, how dare she? Then Susan texted me, saying, Leah, I'm so sorry. I slipped my tongue, so now Zoe knows that you like Kyle. As soon as Zoe entered the house, I blocked her way and yelled, So, you and Kyle, what on earth? Duh, it's obvious. We're a couple. How dare you? Why not? I'm the most popular girl in the school now, not you. Maybe you should ask Mommy and Daddy to transfer you to another school again. Remember what happened at our last school? Then she shoved past me. Ugh! How dare she bring that up? What happened at my last school was horrible and traumatic. It's time to show her who's the boss around here. This is my school. No way am I gonna let her get ahead of me. The next day at school, there was a huge announcement. The beauty pageant Miss Teen was being held in 2 weeks. Some kids shouted out, Zoe, you need to apply. The win is yours for sure. And Zoe was just standing there, pretending to be all shy and everything. Ugh, why would they think Zoe was suitable for Miss Teen? Someone needed to show them who's truly worthy. How about you and I compete? And let's see who actually deserves to be Miss Teen. Okay, why not? Then I walked toward her and whispered in her ear, and if you lose, you have to break up with Kyle. Deal? What? That's ridiculous! But, okay, whatever. I will win anyway. And when I do win, you have to do anything I say. Do we have a deal? Deal. There's no way I was letting her win. So I bought the most dazzling designer dresses, booked the best hairdressers and makeup artists, and prepared myself carefully for the question round. All the efforts paid off because I made it to the finale. Zoe made it too, as well as Susan. Yeah, I forgot to mention that she also wanted to try out, but no problem, as beating them would be a piece of cake. I headed backstage to get changed when I suddenly got a notification on my phone. I opened it and almost dropped my phone in shock. There, all over social media, was a photo from the worst moment of my life. It was taken at a party just after I'd been pushed into the pool. I was a drenched, frizzy-haired, smudged makeup mess. Oh no, this photo could ruin my competition chances. And my life. But how? This was at my old high school. It must be Zoe. Only she knew about that. I stormed to her dressing room to see that she was yelling at a guy. Who told you to cut my dress? Who? That poor guy looked so frightened and stammered. Leah told me to. What? He's lying! Then I rushed over to the guy and confronted him. Scared, he blurted out that Susan had paid him to cut Zoe's dress and then blame it on me. What? Susan? My best friend? But why would she do that? Zoe and I sat down and tried to put the pieces together. When they were at the beauty salon, Susan had told her that I was bad-mouthing her behind her back. So, feeling mad, Zoe also told her how I'd been teased at my old school for being not rich enough. And then she showed that pic to her. Susan did borrow her phone after that, so that's when she must have got her hands on the photo. My God, I couldn't believe it! No wonder Zoe was kinda moody after she came home from the salon and played that glue prank on me. And Susan? How could she do this to me? I thought we were best friends. We went back to my dressing room. Oh no, my beautiful dress was ruined too. There was no way we could continue the contest. But then Zoe turned to me and said, "Give me 15 minutes. I'll get you another dress. You stay here and finish your makeup." But what about you? Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Then, as promised, Zoe returned with this stunning dress. I quickly changed and went on stage. I saw Susan gawping at me in confused shock. Ha! In your face, cheater! But where was Zoe? Then the moderator joined Susan and me on stage and announced that Zoe couldn't compete anymore because of personal matters. That's when I realized she'd given up her spot in the final so she could go and get me a new dress. But why would she do that? My questions would have to wait as the final round began. Susan was up first. After her, I nervously walked to the center of the stage. The audience went quiet as the judge read the question. Everyone has experienced something that has changed their perspective of life. Can you tell us about your most memorable experience and what you learned about it? Oh God, that was a hard one. I only prepared about current events, statistics, politics, but not this. I started to panic, and that's when I saw Zoe smiling at me. I can do it, or else Zoe would have given up the competition for nothing. So I took a deep breath. My most memorable experience is being here and taking part in this competition. I've learned that it's not always about winning, especially if that means hurting others in the process, as that's just terrible. But I know that whatever the outcome, I'm lucky, as beyond the competitiveness is family love. And it is the most important thing in the world, because family will never let you down, no matter what. So, I'd just like to thank my cousin Zoe, as I wouldn't be standing here without her. After my speech, Susan joined me on stage, and we nervously waited for the judges to announce the winner. The winner of Miss Teen 2020 is, congratulations, Leah Jones. OMG! I'd won! I couldn't believe it! After the competition, Zoe ran over to me and hugged me. Thanks for helping me. I couldn't have done it without you, and I'm so sorry for everything. Zoe began to sniffle. I'm sorry too. And then we hugged each other even tighter. Then she let go, looked at the ground, and spoke in a sad voice. So, as I promised, I will break up with Kyle. I had no idea you had a crush on him, else I would never have dated him. I swear. I smiled at her and said, I know, and it's okay. You don't need to break up with him because of me. If you really love him, then I'm happy for you. Zoe was so thrilled, then she hugged me again. Yeah, we hugged a lot on that day. After that, Zoe and I became best friends, and she loves studying at my public school so much that even though her mansion's renovations are finished, she's staying here. according to her, our old private school just had too much drama. That I could confirm. We're now trying to live more humble and stop being some problematic rich kids. As for Susan, after the competition, I confronted her. Turns out she was always jealous of me because everyone noticed me over her, and she hated how I treated her like my sidekick. That's why she came up with the plan to make Zoe and me fight against each other so that she could win Miss Teen and finally get the attention she desperately wanted. I felt a little bit bad for her. I mean, I guess I had acted unfairly toward her, but she shouldn't have tried sabotaging me. So now we wouldn't have lost a friend. Being kinder to people is definitely the way forward, and it's working, as this cute guy called Ben has asked me out. Actually, we're going on a double date with Zoe and Kyle on Friday, and I can't wait. I can't believe it's been a year since Gerald passed away. I know it's been hard, but on the bright side, at least you still have your 2 wonderful daughters. Thank you. She smiled. Then she rubbed Jamie's head. I'm very proud of this one. Yeah. Jamie's pretty, Jamie's girly, Jamie's adorable. And I was just the other child. I watched on as the 3 of them relaxed on the porch, giggling about dumb stuff and enjoying their lemonade, while I struggled with the stupid lawnmower. They didn't even notice me. I quickly finished up, then I grabbed my skateboard and hurried out of there. Charlotte, stop right there. And where exactly do you think you're going without my permission? Skateboarding. I grumbled, then left. Whatever. She didn't care anyway. She just wanted to suffocate me. It wasn't like this back when I had Dad on my side. As you can see, I'm not a girly girl. All that manicure and makeup stuff just seems like nonsense to me. But my non-identical twin, Jamie, lives for it. She always wakes up extra early just so she has more time to style her hair, apply her makeup, and pick out her daily outfit. Then all she does at school is sit around with the other Barbies and giggle at pretty much everything. But guess that's the kind of girl Mom prefers, as it's blatantly clear that Jamie's her favorite. It's always me who had to do all the chores in the house, just so her Jamie could sit there scrolling through her phone. There was one time when I was washing the dishes, I heard a deafening shriek. No, my sister wasn't being murdered. Instead, there was a spider crawling across the floor. Poof! It was just a spider. Nuts! I didn't want to be a chore slave. I just wanted to skateboard. Yeah, skateboarding and painting are my true passions. But Mom told me skateboarding was for boys. Ugh, how ridiculous. So I often snuck out. There were times I got so into it that I lost track of time and arrived home to Mom's furious eyes. You're grounded. Next time, I won't hesitate in breaking your boards in half. Jeez, that was so unfair. I pushed past her and ran into my room. Then, clutching my board, I burst into tears. I wish Dad was still here. Whenever Mom and I argued, he always came up to my room and told me how Mom only acted the way she did because she cares about me. She just has a different way of showing it. It's been a whole year since he passed, all because of a freak accident at the factory he worked in. Now, we all had to rely on Mom's home tailor job, and I just became the errand girl, while Jamie sits around looking pretty. Worse still, Mom insisted I get a part-time job to support the family, while Jamie didn't have to. When I questioned Mom on this, she just said, Jamie isn't like you. She wouldn't be able to handle both school and work. Excuse me, what? But I knew arguing with Mom about it was pointless. Anyways, it all worked out okay, as I landed myself a job in this cool skateboard store. Oh, and also, less house chores. One rainy afternoon, the store was quiet. So I took out my sketchbook and designed some skateboards. Then my manager, Rick, peered over my shoulder. Uh-oh, was I in trouble? But to my surprise, he said, "That's pretty good." Then he passed me a flyer for a skateboard designing contest. "You should give it a try." This contest was meant to be, so I spent all my free time shut away in my room working on my design. I didn't see Mum or Jamie for a full week. How peaceful. And guess what? I won first prize. It was awesome. However, Mum snatched the prize money from me due to family financial reasons. So my money was going to be used on new clothes and makeup for Jamie. Unbelievable! I didn't want to be under this roof anymore. But at 15, where else could I go? Poof. Then Mum told me her work was slow at the moment, so I should enter more contests to support my family. Hey, it got me out of chores, so I agreed to it. And I pretty much won all of them. But it did annoy me that I didn't get to keep my rewards. Then when I saw Jamie showing off her new shoes, I just wanted to yank them off her feet and throw them at her. Ugh! I thought twins were meant to have some sort of deep connection or something. Not me and Jamie. We couldn't be more different. Finally, I had a day off, so I arranged to go skateboarding with Rick. I grabbed my board and was about to leave when Mum blocked the door. "Charlotte, where do you think you're going? Jamie has a date tomorrow, and her dress needs hand-washing." What? This was ridiculous. I rolled my eyes and said, "In that case, she can wash it herself." "Don't take that attitude with me, young lady. You'll do as you're told." Through angry sobs, I screamed at her, "I wish you weren't my mom!" Then I ran upstairs to my room. Right at that moment, the doorbell rang. My mom calmed down, cleared her throat, and opened the door. Huh? Why was there an expensive-looking car in our driveway? And why was a wealthy-looking couple standing on the doorstep? Curious, I hid behind the wall to see who they were and what they were here for. From my eavesdropping, I found out that the couple was the Barnes. They'd just retired from their jobs working for the government in the Secret Intelligence Department. Mom and Mrs. Barnes were besties in high school, so when they both fell pregnant at the same time, Mom offered to bring their daughter up as her own, so they could go and work away on their secret mission. "We've both taken early retirement, and we can finally enjoy life. We're very grateful to both you and Gerald for looking after our daughter, but we're here to take her home now." Oh my God! Turns out, one of us was adopted. No wonder we were nothing alike. But was it Jamie or me? Could it be me? I mean, Mom always preferred Jamie, so she could be her biological daughter. I knew they were my real parents. I could feel it. So taking a deep breath, I nervously stepped out to meet them. "Jamie, come down here, sweetie." Mom called, and I froze on the spot. I watched on as Jamie appeared, and Mom introduced her to her real parents. She didn't even seem surprised. She just replied, "Yes, I know," then sweetly grinned. "I'm so happy that I can finally meet you both." The Barnes cooed over Jamie like she was a puppy or something. Then they got emotional and all. Ugh, it made me want to puke. I ran up to my room, locked the door, and cried. Life was so unfair. Jamie was always the lucky one, while I always got the raw deal out of things. I must have cried myself to sleep, as when I woke up, it was morning. I reached for my phone. Jamie had messaged me. "It's sad you missed my farewell dinner. I had a great time living with you. Come and hang out sometime, okay?" Poof! I aggressively threw my phone down onto my bed. Bold of her to assume I would ever want to hang out with her. We had nothing in common. Luck alone was an example. Life went on, but without Jamie, as she moved to some rich kid's school. And I continued going to school, work, sneaking out to skateboard, and avoiding Mom as much as possible. Then one chemistry class, while we were carrying out an experiment in the lab, one of my classmates made a mistake. And boom! We were all left looking like Cinderella. And that might have actually been the best thing of that day, since we were dismissed 2 hours early. Excited, I rushed home to get my skateboard, but I knew I needed to sneak past Mom so she didn't accuse me of skipping class. But as I passed the kitchen, I saw her sitting at the table sobbing to herself. What was going on? Suddenly, she stood up and walked out to the backyard. There was a leather notebook and a pen on the kitchen table, so I tiptoed over and took a peek. It looked like her diary. Those freshly written lines were stained with tears. Jamie, my baby, I miss you terribly. I want you to live a wealthy, happy life, so I made the ultimate sacrifice. I tell myself every day that you're now a Barnes, not a Smith anymore. Not my daughter anymore. What? I couldn't trust my own eyes. What did these words mean? Could it be... But even if she mistreats me sometimes, she couldn't be that kind of person, right? I tore out that page, then hurried off to the skate park. Only I couldn't concentrate. It was so bad, I messed up my pop shove-it and landed on my butt. Ugh, this was driving me insane. That evening, Mom appeared in my doorway and asked, "Charlotte, what did you do this afternoon?" I answered, "I told you already. I was at school and then the skate park." "Did you see my notebook? The leather one?" I shook my head in response. "Oh, it's my expense book. I can't remember where I left it." She gave another scan around my room before leaving. When she was out of sight, I immediately pulled out my phone and texted Jamie. "Jamie, I miss you a lot. Can I come over to your house tomorrow?" I needed to see Mr. and Mrs. Barnes. I had to find out what was going on once and for all. Jamie replied she had a date the next day. While I was typing out a reply, she sent me another message. "We can't hang out. Please stop contacting me." Okay, that was weird. Did she sense something was up? I checked Jamie's social network profile and noted down the name of her new school. The next morning, I skipped class, went straight to Jamie's school administrator's office to ask for the Barnes' address. Oh, and of course, I made up a convincing story. Jamie's my sister, but then we found out she's actually the Barnes' biological daughter. Now my mom, who raised Jamie all these years, is really sick, and I need to tell her, but I don't know how to reach her. Perfect! She handed me the address and even wished me luck. There was no point wasting time, so I skated my way round to the Barneses. As I rang on their doorbell, I could feel my heart somersaulting in my chest. I introduced myself as soon as they answered the door. "Hey, I'm Charlotte, Mrs. Smith's daughter, but I strongly believe I'm not Charlotte Smith because I have something to show you." Then I handed them the torn page from my mom's diary. They both turned ghostly pale, and Mr. Barnes even had to grip onto the doorframe to steady himself. I felt bad for putting them through this. I mean, what if I was wrong? So I suggested, let's just do a DNA test to be sure. A few days later, the Barnes turned up at our house with Jamie. They slammed 2 DNA test results down in front of Mom. I peered down at them. Whoa! Turns out I really am the Barnes' biological daughter after all. Mom gave this expressionless look, but then in a quiet voice she said, "I just wanted Jamie to have a wealthy and privileged life. She's not as strong as Charlotte. She needs this more. Please don't blame her. She didn't know anything about this." Then she hugged Jamie and cried. Mr. and Mrs. Barnes looked overwhelmed. Finally, Mr. Barnes managed to find the words to say, "Jamie's also like a daughter to us now. We will take care of her like you did with our daughter, but just stay away from us." He pulled Jamie away from Mom and guided her out of the house. Mrs. Barnes hugged me as she started crying. I found myself doing the same. This was my real mom holding me. Whoa, this was so crazy. I packed my things, but as I was leaving, my old mom called me back. "Charlotte, I have something to give to you." Then she handed me a small box full of cash.
This is your prize money. I put it away for your college fund. You better have it back. I'm so sorry."
My sight blurred with tears. Dad was right. She still cared for me. "My parents will forgive you. Then you'll soon see both of us again," I said as I hugged her tightly. Then I turned and left. A new life was waiting ahead of me. Finally, after an 11-hour flight, I arrived at LAX, Los Angeles International Airport. It's awesome! I can't wait to see my mom. You see, my dad's French and my mom's American. We used to all live together in France, but then they split up and Mom moved back here. Of course, I've talked to her on FaceTime and stuff, but this will be the first time I've properly seen her in 5 years. I haven't visited before because Mom's a super successful businesswoman and she works really hard. That meant she wouldn't have the time to provide me with the attention I needed. But now that I'm 16 and I can look after myself, I'm finally able to visit. So, thanks to my dad and stepmom for my plane ticket birthday present, I'm now in sunny LA for a whole month. Not only do I get to spend time with Mom, but I also get to chill out in her enormous villa. Ah, bliss. But first, let's get all my luggage, then find a taxi to my mom's. Yeah, unfortunately, she couldn't come to pick me up since she had some work to do. But no problem, I can handle this myself. Okay, maybe I spoke too soon. It's been half an hour and my luggage was nowhere to be seen. Then, this handsome guy approached me and said, "Hey, looks like your luggage has gone AWOL. Do you need any help?" Cute and helpful. I could totally get used to US guys. I showed him my ticket, and turns out I was waiting at the wrong carousel. Oops. After guiding me to the correct one, this guy, whose name I found out was Zach, even pulled my luggage down for me. But one of my cases got stuck and burst open, causing everything to tumble out. "Girl, it's not your lucky day, is it?" He burst out laughing. Oh well, at least it wasn't all bad. I mean, a cute guy had rescued me, right? He helped me pick up my things, then he offered to drive me to my mom's house. After some 30 minutes, he began to slow down. I looked out the window and, oh my God! This is the chicest villa ever! The pool, the tennis court, the palm trees. It was exactly like a movie star home. I was gawping at the villa when suddenly I heard a car engine sound. Startled, I turned around to see Zach zooming away. "My suitcases!" I yelled. Ugh, my laptop and iPad were in there too. Oh God, why is this happening to me? And on my very first day in the US? At least I still had my phone and passport with me. Phew. So I called my mom. Needless to say, I was a distraught mess when she arrived. Who'd have thought that such a kind-looking guy would turn out to be a thief? Anyways, my mom could buy me new clothes and things, and I could still have an amazing time in her villa, right? Mom led me to my room and told me to get some rest. After that disaster, I was dead exhausted, so I quickly fell asleep on the comfiest bed ever. When I awoke, it was dark outside. I realized I hadn't eaten anything since the flight, so I went downstairs and checked the fridge and cupboards. Huh? They were all empty. I was still digging around in the kitchen when my mom returned with some burgers. "Sweetie, I only got back from my business trip yesterday, so I haven't had time to go to the grocery store. Let's just eat fast food today, okay?" I didn't mind, as it was awesome to have dinner with my mom again after such a long time. I took a look around the room. There was barely any furniture here. My mom said that's minimalism, a trendy lifestyle in LA nowadays. Less is more. How cool is that? The next morning we went out, but what's with that old rusty car? Seeing my confused look, she quickly explained that this was only temporary as her car was being serviced. But then Mom couldn't get the garage door to open. Turns out, normally she had her own chauffeur, but since I've traveled thousands of miles to visit her, she wanted to drive herself. Aw, how sweet. In the following days, my mom and I enjoyed ourselves in LA. Sunbathing by the pool, spa days, shopping. This is definitely the best vacation of my life. At least until that morning, I was awoken by a loud quarrel. Looking down from the stairs, I saw Mom in the living room with a strange woman. She was pointing at the couch. Geez, that's where I spilled soy sauce yesterday while eating sushi. Then Mom appeared and sounded flustered. She told me to quickly pack my things as we were leaving. Mom, is there something wrong?
Oh, nothing, sweetie. It's just that the couch is dirty, so let's just get someone in to clean the entire villa.
Wow, Mom would deep clean the whole house just because of a soy sauce stain? How rich is she? So, where will we stay this time? A luxurious 5-star hotel? Or a magnificent mansion in Beverly Hills? But then the car came to a stop in front of some shabby apartment building. Huh? This couldn't be right. Mom told me this was her friend's spare apartment, so we would stay here a few days for convenience.
Elena, it's probably best if you stay away from the people in this area. They don't have the same lifestyle as us. You know what I mean.
Ugh. Yeah, this place was the opposite of the villa. Cramped room, hard bed, and the bathroom didn't even have a bathtub. Since moving here, Mom didn't take me out anymore. In the evenings, she dressed up all elegantly and went out to her fancy work meetings. On one such evening, I was sitting alone watching YouTube, munching on French fries for the 5th time this week, when there was a knock on the door. I opened it, and standing there was a scruffy guy, claiming to be Frankie, the landlord's son. I told him there must be a mistake, as we were only here for a few days. Then I went to close the door, but he blocked it with his foot.
Miss Anita has rented this apartment for 2 years. What do you mean a few days? I just saw her take a cab at the front door. Don't lie to me.
No, my mom is a successful businesswoman who has a villa in Brentwood Park.
Then you must have mistaken your mom for someone else. In short, remind your businesswoman mom to pay the rent.
Then he sneered and walked away. How dare he say that? And why did I keep on running into jerks? Ugh! When Mom returned, I told her what had happened. I thought she'd find it funny or something, but nope. Instead, she got really mad.
You shouldn't have opened the door to him. I told you not to socialize with the people here.
Okay, hearing made-up lies about yourself like that must suck, but did she have to be so furious about it? The next morning, I was drinking tea on the balcony when suddenly I saw a familiar face passing by down the street. My God, it was the jerk from the airport, Zach! That thief! I shouted, rushing down, but when I got there, he disappeared. I was still exasperated when a voice came from behind.
What on earth are you doing screaming this early in the morning?
I turned around to see Frankie leaning against the wall with his arms folded. None of your business, swindler.
Huh? Swindler? What do you mean?
Quit lying. I already told my mom all about you trying to con money out of me.
Is that so? So, you think I'm the liar?
Before I could answer that provoking question, I heard my mom's voice calling down from the balcony.
Hey, rich girl, if you want a reality check, I suggest you come meet me tonight, and we'll go follow your mom.
Mom appeared and, frowning, asked me why I was talking to Frankie. I blurted out something about asking for directions, then quickly entered the room and closed the door. Frankie was clearly a thieving, lying jerk, right? But then, why were his words lingering in my mind? I had noticed a few strange things, such as when we were at the villa, I asked Mom where the cutlery was, but she couldn't remember. But then in this apartment, she immediately got it. Plus, why was there a photo of her in the bedroom when this was her friend's place? That night, when Mom was getting ready to go out again, I spotted her necklace. Only, it was actually my necklace. The one that had been stolen along with the rest of my stuff. My dad got that necklace custom made just for me, so it was a one of a kind, but why did Mom have it? I complimented her on it and asked her where she'd got it from. Blushing, she excitedly told me that this rich man she'd just started dating had bought it for her. Then she said he was taking her for dinner tonight. I forced a smile, but my head was filled with questions. Who really was Mom? I secretly followed my mom down the street. Suddenly, a hand patted my shoulder.
Let's go.
I turned around and it was Frankie. Without saying anything, I nodded and quickly got into his car, and we followed Mom's taxi. Hold on. Isn't that the villa we stayed in before? After a while, a luxury car arrived, taking my mom to a nearby expensive restaurant. We peered through the glass wall. There she was. My mom was sitting there, smiling and talking with some man in a suit. Was she pretending to live in that villa to trick that man? Was my mom a gold digger? I couldn't watch any more of this, so I pulled on Frankie's arm. But weirdly, he seemed to be as shocked as I was. Wasn't this your idea? So why the pale face? He just shook his head and took me home. We waited in the apartment for Mom to return, and oh boy, it was tense. Around midnight, we heard the door open, and Mom walked in and looked at us in alarm. She started shooing Frankie out of there, but I interrupted her. Mom, I know everything. You've lived here for 2 years. You're poor, and you scam rich men. Sweetie, it's not like that. Please calm down and I'll explain everything to you. So, it turns out, after divorcing my dad, she was determined to go back to the US and succeed at business. But she failed, and she was so embarrassed she lied to me and Dad. Then when she heard that I was coming to visit, she spent the little savings she had on renting a swanky villa for me. But when I accidentally spilled soy sauce on that expensive couch, she couldn't afford to fix it, so we were kicked out. As for the man I was with tonight, I ran into him while walking outside the villa. He's rich and nice. He likes me and I like him too. But what about that necklace? Mom, it's actually mine. It was in my stolen suitcase. My mom gave me a confused look, but before she could say anything, Frankie blurted out,
That man's a fraud.
Mom and I gaped at Frankie as he turned to me and said,
I'm sorry, but I think you guys need to know the truth.
Then Frankie told us how that man was none other than Zach's dad. After taking me back to the villa, Zach figured my mom was rich, so he persuaded his dad to come and flirt with her.
But how did you dig up the dirt on these guys? Because I know Zach. When I saw Lana chasing him, I knew he'd stolen from her. But he's my friend.
Great, so you've both been lying to me. Then I rushed into my room, locked the door, and burst into tears. The next morning, Mom knocked on my door, but I ignored her.
Lana, I get that you're upset with me, but I've left a sandwich here, so please at least eat something. I'm really sorry. Just wanted to be the perfect mother for you.
Her words caused me to sob all over again. But I can say, from the bottom of my heart, I feel sorry for her. After that, I opened the door and hugged her tightly, and then we both blubbered into each other's arms. I'm leaving LA today, with Mom. She's moving back to France with me, where she can start afresh. While I was dragging my suitcase to the taxi, Frankie appeared and apologized to me. I just shrugged and told him it didn't matter anymore. I mean, at least he came clean in the end and saved my mom from that swindler.
Hey, rich girl. Good luck. And, feel free to keep in touch.
So, what now? Well, Mom is settling back into French life. She has a new job and a chic apartment. I go and stay with her each weekend, and it's good to finally spend time with the real her. As for Frankie, well, we send each other lots of Snapchats. So, okay, maybe I kinda like him. I'm planning to visit him in the summer. Hopefully my next trip to the US won't be as crazy as my last one.
Too much studying and not enough sleep was making me feel like a zombie. Chocolate would help, right? So I drowsily walked downstairs. Huh? Why was my whole family there with their suitcases? Are you guys going somewhere? Yes, Colorado for a ski trip. That's awesome! You're the best, Daddy! Not you, Helen. You have studying to do. And this is a special award for Christine for winning her scholarship. What? So you're just going to leave me out because of some meaningless grades? This is so unfair. Ugh! Whatever. I don't even need them to go with me. Shh. Come here. And I'm gonna let you in on a secret. I can go to the ski resort by myself and have way more fun. But how, you ask? It's called lucid dreaming. I first heard about it through the biggest buzz movie, Inception, and realized that I've had experienced the same things before. Since then, I've become an expert at this. So before I go to bed, I just have to write a script saying where I want to go, with whom, what I want to do, and 3, 2, 1. I'm asleep and living my best life. In fact, I could say that those beautiful self-designed dreams are like meditation to me. Because, to be honest, my real life is tedious. No matter how hard I tried, I was no match for my younger half-sister, Christine. In my dad and grandma's eyes, a child of a doctor in physics, as well as a grandchild of a history professor, should automatically be a walking encyclopedia or something. But unfortunately, I didn't excel at the academic side of life. Ugh. They treat Christine like this precious gemstone and me like some boring old rock. Every week usually entails her getting excellent grades or winning some reward, then all of my family lavishing her with gifts and praise, while I'm treated like an outsider in my own family. Ugh! Just thinking about it makes me want to scream. So, they want me to stay home and concentrate on tomorrow's test, huh? Nah, you wish. So instead, I grabbed my pen and started writing tonight's awesome dream script. Let's see. That's right. The obnoxious Roger dared to heartlessly throw the candy I gave him in the trash, even though he'd been flirting with me. What a jerk. I will definitely retaliate against him tonight. Lying in bed, I closed my eyes and repeated this sentence. I'm going to kick him out of my life. And you won't believe it. In the dream, he kept chasing me like crazy, but I totally blanked him. Helen, wake up! Time's running out! My best friend Gabby kicked my chair and I jolted awake. Oh no, there were only 5 minutes left. I frantically ticked on the paper and hurriedly submitted it to the monitor. Hey, did you not get any sleep or something? Well, I stayed up late writing the script for my dream. It was worth it as I got payback on Roger. What if you get a bad grade? Never mind. I'll be fine when I come home tonight with an A+ dream. But things turned out not to be as simple as I thought. That afternoon when I arrived home, I was about to sneak up to my bedroom to write my next amazing script when someone grabbed my bag strap and pulled me back. It was Grandma and Dad, and both of them seemed to be mad. How long are you going to live like this? Education is important to this family, yet you don't seem to care. Do you realize this week alone your teacher has contacted me 3 times? But Dad, I really don't like those boring subjects. I only like no more drawing or writing your silly stories. You need to focus on your studies, else you'll end up a useless person like... She suddenly stopped, which made me curious. Like who? But neither she nor my dad said anything. They just quietly walked away, leaving me alone. Honestly, I never wanted to disappoint them that much. So this time I was going to try my best to not let them down. Dad! Grandma! Look! I got a B+ in my math test. No one cared what I said. My stepmom cuddled Christine and looked at her with sparkling eyes. My wonderful daughter. I know the top student award is just a piece of cake to you, unlike someone else. Then she turned to me and tutted, Helen, please, you're making a show of yourself. That's embarrassing. My face fell, and I forced back tears. But I tried so hard to get this grade. A B+ is nothing to be proud of. I chucked my exam paper in the trash, then stormed up to my room. It didn't matter what I did or how hard I tried. This household would always treat me like a loser. Dream on, Helen. Go back to your happy place. In front of me was the crimson sunset sky. I'd been scripting this moment for so long. lounging lazily on the beach without anyone complaining. But suddenly the sky darkened, and the inky clouds seemed intent on swallowing me. Huh? What was going on? This wasn't a part of the script. Terrified, I ran into a forest, but it was so dark and spooky here, and I tripped over a branch and fell. Ouch! As I rubbed my ankle and started crying my eyes out, suddenly a strange woman appeared. She took me into a wooden house at the end of the forest and gently helped bandage me up. This woman, well, she didn't scare me at all. Instead, I felt warm around her. Curious, I tried to take a closer look at her face, but then I suddenly woke up and realized tears were rolling down my cheeks. What a strange dream. I immediately drew all the things I'd seen, that forest, that house, but strangely, I couldn't remember that woman's face. Why are you drawing all this nonsense? My dad snatched the sketch from my hand and looked at it frowning. It appeared in my dream and... Get rid of them all. From now on, if I see you wasting your time on these stupid drawings again, there will be consequences. This was too much. I couldn't live without drawing. It was the only thing keeping me sane. I had to get out of here, live my way. Forget them and their stupid standards. I would create my own world. I planted myself in Gabby's room, and this is where I've been for almost a week. Luckily, Gabby's parents are totally chill with me staying. As for my family, they haven't messaged me once. And yes, dreams do go on. But now I dreaded going to sleep as my lucid dreams were still all messed up. Sometimes beautiful, sometimes bad. And for the most part, it did not turn out the way I wanted it to anymore. Until one day, that creepy forest appeared again. No matter how much I screamed to wake myself up, I still couldn't get out of that nightmare. Panicked, I kept running and running in the hope of finding a safe place till... I saw that woman, and once again she reached out her hand to help me. This time I wouldn't miss my chance. I looked carefully at her face, remembering every detail, and as soon as I woke up, I drew her. Wow, I didn't know you watched this kind of show. Gabby giggled. What show? Look, she's a celebrity. She hosts some TV show that my mom watches sometimes. So, that woman is a real person? If so, I have to find her. I didn't really know what was going on, only that there was something tying me to this woman and I needed to figure this out. Luckily, Gabby has an uncle who works at the studio, and he gave us special passes to meet this host in the flesh. When the cameras stopped filming, she turned and saw me, and her eyes widened in alarm. Helen? Helen, is it really you? Then she rushed over and hugged me. Huh? What did she just say? We didn't know each other, and... The weird thing is, this hug didn't feel strange at all. Instead, I felt the same warmth as when she'd taken care of me in my dream. As she loosened her embrace on me and gave me this beaming smile, I said, and you are? Darling, it's me, your mother. That's when I realized something. Of course, she was my mom. Look, we had the same eyes. Needless to say, this was a huge shock. We hugged each other for a long time in tears. Then Mom took me backstage, got me a glass of water, then she told me everything. So after I was born, Mom once got caught up in a cheating scandal. Dad was angry about the damage this would do to his career, so he kicked her out of the house and wouldn't let her see me. A long time later, she found out that Grandma was behind everything, just because she didn't approve of this marriage, so she came up with that plan. But why didn't you ever try to find me when you've always been living this close? Oh, no, sweetie. I've always kept an eye on you. One time, years ago, I saw you playing in the park. You had your hair in pigtails and... I tried to approach you, but your dad threatened me. He is a very powerful man who's actually capable of destroying my life. And I didn't think it was fair to drag you through all of that. But things have changed now. I'll never leave you alone, ever again. I strolled into the house like normal, and everyone stopped what they were doing and glared at me with disgust. Oh, you're back. If you're not prepared to study properly, then don't bother staying. I took a deep breath, then said, You can't treat me like this anymore. I try my best, and it's not fair that you punish me for just being me. So I'm leaving, and I'm never coming back. Psst, where will you go? That's when Mom walked in. Oh God, you should have seen the looks on their faces. Grandma actually looked like she'd swallowed a swarm of wasps. I stood by and let you manipulate and control me. Well, no more. I'm taking my daughter, and we're going to have the life we both deserve. Then, ignoring their angry words, she grabbed my arm and led me out of there. So that's the moment when I left home and moved in with my mom. Now I draw as much as I want. In fact, Mom's letting me create a mural on the living room wall. It's going to be epic when it's finished. Oh, and about the lucid dreams, I don't write scripts anymore. Instead, I realize that I'm better off focusing on my reality and making myself the best version of myself I can be. After all, as great as a dream world can be, it's nowhere near as good as experiencing life firsthand.
Hey, Daisy here. I'm just your normal 19-year-old college girl living away from home for the first time. And can't deny that it could get lonely sometimes, and I felt homesick a lot. But it's okay though, as I have Lucas, my loving boyfriend. Okay, yeah, his family is well off, so he always treats me to nice places and buys me nice gifts. A few months ago, he told me to move in with him in his family's mansion. And I've agreed, but don't get me wrong, I'm not a gold digger at all. I just had no other choice. It all started one night when thieves broke into my apartment while I was asleep. It was terrifying. I knew they were ransacking my living room and stealing my TV and laptop, but I'd rather stay put to protect myself. After that, I didn't want to be home alone at all anymore. Lucas, too, was worried for me, so one evening he told me, "Daisy, I think you should come live with me, at least until you find a roommate." Wow. I wasn't expecting that, but I guess it made sense. I felt a bit awkward about it, though, as I've only been to his house, or should I say his parents' mansion, a few times. And although there was plenty of space, and his parents adored me, but I didn't want to feel like I was intruding. Sensing my apprehension, he continued, "I've explained the situation to my parents, and they're cool with it." I smiled at him and replied, "Well, okay then, but it will just be temporary." Before I moved in with Lucas and his family, I felt very anxious. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to adapt to their lifestyle, and I didn't want to upset his parents. I worried a lot, but not once did I think my trouble would be with the maid. Yep, you heard me right. On my first day at the mansion, a cheerful woman immediately ran towards me and greeted me. Mrs. Harris introduced her to me. "This is our maid, Sarah. She's been with us for years, so if you have any problem, just ask her. We're all family here. Make yourself comfortable." Then Sarah quickly grabbed my suitcase and smiled at me. "Miss, let me help you with that. I'll show you to the room." It was so strange having someone else do stuff for me like this. I could just smile back and follow her upstairs. That made me feel so welcomed here, and how nice this maid was. Maybe we could be friends. But suddenly, a thump cuts off my thoughts. It was Sarah. She'd thrown my suitcase to the floor, then said, "What on earth do you have in there? Carry it yourself. Your room is down the hallway to the left." And she walked off. What was that? Did I do something wrong? I quickly picked up my stuff in confusion. I didn't want to make an enemy of anyone here, especially not on my first day. So after I unpacked my stuff, I went down to the kitchen to help her prepare dinner. She was still so grumpy at me and told me to just get lost as I'd only be in her way. I remained persistent as I really wanted to resolve whatever her misunderstandings about me were. Eventually, she gave in and said, "Fine, you want to help? Go dice up all of those onions." "Yes, sure, but all of these?" I asked her while staring at a basket full of onions. "Are you going to help me or not?" she said sharply. I replied, Okay, don't worry, I'll do it." I tried starting up a convo with her, but she just rolled her eyes at me. Meanwhile, the onions were giving me hell. My eyes were burning and tears were streaming out. Ouch! When I finally finished, she stared at my swollen eyes and said, "If you're that upset about living here, you could just leave." "It's the onions," I told her. She smirked as she took them off me, then walked straight to the trash and threw them away, saying, "You took too long. I didn't need it anymore." What? My face dropped, but I was far too exhausted to argue with her anyway. That's when Lucas and his parents came down for dinner. Sarah quickly set up the tables, then called me over with a bright smile as she pulled out a chair for me. "Miss Campbell, please take a seat. Dinner is ready." Was she for real? I couldn't keep up with her constant change in personality.
After dinner, I approached Sarah while she was doing the dishes. Look, I'm sorry, but did I do something to upset you? Yes, you sure did. You waltz around like you own the place, but you're nothing more than a parasite. And I won't let you worm your way into my home. Before I had time to process her words, she grabbed an expensive-looking marble plate and smirked at me as she dropped it onto the ground. Then, with a piece of broken plate, she quickly slit her hand and yelled out loud, "Miss, I'm so sorry for vexing you, but you shouldn't have broken this. It's Mr. Harris's favorite plate." Hearing the crashing sound, everyone quickly gathered in the kitchen and stared at me for answers. I immediately explained, "No, it's not like that." But Mrs. Harris said, "It's okay. Let's help Sarah first." Then she led her off to get the first aid kit. I grabbed Lucas's arm. "Babe, I really didn't do that." He reassured me with a smile. "Daisy, don't worry about it." "You don't understand. Sarah did it on purpose and blamed me." He laughed as if he'd just heard something ridiculous, then said, "No way. I bet it was just some sort of misunderstanding. Sarah is really nice. Don't worry. You two will get close in no time. Now let me clean up this mess. You go and relax." I felt frustrated and fed up, but I reluctantly went back to my room. This girl was definitely onto me. But for what reason? Over the following weeks, her vendetta against me continued. She washed my white clothes with colored ones, then intentionally threw away my stuff and made out she mistook it for trash while cleaning my room. She put extra hot chili flakes in my food, then rushed over with a glass of water when I started to choke, and so on. Worse still, Lucas and his parents wouldn't hear a bad word said against her. They were completely oblivious to how crazy she was. I didn't understand why she hated me so much. Was she jealous of me or something? All right then. If she wanted to play with me, then game on. So I decided to spy on her to catch her red-handed and show everyone her true self. My chance to expose her finally arrived. I was passing her room and I saw her holding a watch. I recognized it. It was Mr. Harris's. She looked shifty as she placed it into her drawer and hid it underneath some of her clothes. Aha! Got her! I quickly ran to the garden to find Mrs. Harris and managed to persuade her to come with me to Sarah's room. Sarah stood by looking all innocent as Mrs. Harris checked her drawer, but the watch wasn't there, and instead we found it still intact on the vanity in the master bedroom. Huh? At that moment, Sarah suddenly bawled out, "Ma'am, I would never steal from you. You know that. I've gone out of my way to please Miss Campbell here, but she's intent on making my life a misery." Oh my God. Those crocodile tears. Did she have no shame? I tried explaining myself to Mrs. Harris, but she held up her hand and told me she didn't want to hear it. I wanted to make amends, so the next morning, I prepared Mrs. Harris's favorite smoothie and breakfast for her. I set it up nicely on the dining table, then went upstairs to get her, smirking at Sarah as she passed by. Mrs. Harris seemed happy with the gesture, but just an hour later, she said she didn't feel well. She was clutching her stomach as she glared at me and blamed me for poisoning her food. What? How frustrating! And Lucas wasn't even home for me to talk to. So I went to the kitchen to check the expiration date of everything I'd used. But I swear it was all fresh. I even went through the trash to check the used milk carton. That's when I saw some sesame seeds in there. That's odd, as I knew Mrs. Harris was allergic to them, so we never had them in the house. It had to be Sarah. She must have poisoned the breakfast with them when I was out of the room. Later that day, Mrs. Harris was feeling better, so I went to see her and told her that I was leaving, on one condition. Then I persuaded her to come into my room and hide in my closet. By this point, I think she was willing to do anything just to get me out of her house. Then I called Sarah over to help me pack up my stuff. She stepped into my room with a cocky smile and knocked over the box of my stuff, then said, "I was always going to win." I replied, "Fine, you win. But before I leave, I want to ask you something. You put sesame seeds in the breakfast I made for Mrs. Harris, didn't you?" Sarah looked around to check no one else was about before she grinned at me and said, "Yes, it was me, all me. While you were sucking up to Mrs. Harris, I ground some up and mixed them into the disgusting smoothie you made. Oh, I also pretended to steal the watch because I knew you were spying on me. Geez, you made it so easy." "But why?" I asked. "But why?" She imitated my voice. "Because this is my family. I've lived here for years. You can't just show up all pretty and carefree and expect to have everything and push me out of my own home. I never wanted to push you out. All I wanted was to be your friend." As if.
This is my gold mine, not yours. Sooner or later, all of this will be mine, and God knows I deserve it. I've put up with this annoying family and a poor salary for years. Mr. Harris always dreamed of having a daughter, but no, he's stuck with that dumb son of his. It's only a matter of time until he realizes I can be the daughter he longed for. Or, now that you won't be around, it'll be easy for me to trap Lucas by having his baby. Either way, the winner is always me. Suddenly, the wardrobe doors burst open, and out emerged Mrs. Harris looking furious. She pulled Sarah's hair and dragged her out of the room. Wow, who knew the mild-mannered Mrs. Harris could be so kick-ass? I guess everyone has a hidden side. Anyway, this proved my innocence, and Sarah was kicked out right on the spot. Then Mrs. Harris apologized to me and insisted that I should keep staying with them. I thanked her for the offer, but politely declined. As I felt ready to leave and move in with my friend, I was just relieved that she'd learned the truth and that Sarah had gone once and for all. So, Lucas and I are still together and are very happy. Yes, it was annoying he didn't believe me at first, but he's such a sweet and trusting guy that he'd never expect someone could be capable of such horrible things. But hey, that's just one of the many reasons why I love him. As for his parents, well, I still visit them sometimes. I even cook for them now and then, but thankfully, there have been no more sesame seed incidents, and there's no more crazy maid to contend with. Phew!
Did you hear anything I just said? Oh gosh, sorry. And, no. I swear, I wasn't ignoring my friend on purpose. I was just distracted by that guy over there. Luca. I know, he's so handsome. The best part is, he's single. Yep, he broke up with his girlfriend a few months ago. And today was the day I, Michelle Summer, would make Luca Rodriguez my boyfriend. I mean, his heart had to have healed by now, right? The only class I shared with Luca was French, so it was now or never. I wrote a love letter and asked the guy behind me to pass it to Luca. My heart started beating faster and faster until my teacher, Mrs. Davis, intercepted it. Who's passing letters in class? Nobody, huh? Let's see what's so important it can't wait until break. Wait, was she seriously gonna read it in front of the whole class? I watched her slowly open the letter. Oh man, someone sweep in and stop her, please! Dear Luca, I was struck by the lightning of love right from the first time I saw you. I can't stop thinking about your cute smile and how I could drown in your deep blue eyes. I like you, and I was wondering if you like me too. The whole class burst out laughing, but luckily for me, Mrs. Davis left my name out. Phew! I glanced over at Luca. He looked so embarrassed. What a massive fail! As I waited for the bus, I felt kind of down about everything. Then it began to rain. Great! And to top it off, suddenly a car passed by and splashed me. I was literally wet from head to toes. I shouted out in anger. Are you kidding me? The car suddenly reversed, then stopped alongside me. I held my breath as the car window opened. Huh? Luca! What? I'm really sorry. Are you okay? OMG. Luca was speaking to me. Okay, calm down, Michelle. Just play it cool. Oh, I'm fine. It was my fault. I shouldn't have sat at the bus station. Yeah, right. How smooth. Perfect. Now he'd think I was a weirdo and drive away. But he didn't. Instead, he smiled and said, Get in. I'll give you a ride home. Me and Luca? Alone in a car? Thank you, universe. I excitedly got in. Oh, there were 2 other people in the back seat.
He introduced them as his friends, Wesley and Aubrey. Huh? That was so nice of him to give us all a ride. While his two friends were listening to music in the back seat, I got to talk to Luca. That's when I found out that we had so much more in common than I ever expected. He's a big fan of DC Comics, and his favorite series were Arrow and The Flash. Just like me! Oh, how I wished this ride would never reach my house. That night, I couldn't do anything but lay in bed daydreaming about how unreal this whole thing was when my phone beeped. Holy Mother of God. Can anyone please hold my hand? Luca had texted me. Hey, Michelle. Sorry again for soaking you. I had fun talking to you. Was I dreaming? I pinched myself to check. Ouch. Nope. It was vividly real. Then one thing led to another. We chatted till late that night, and it repeated on the day after. And the day after, we basically talked every night. And then something wonderful happened. He asked me out on a date. Yes, you heard me right. A date! Eek! And the best part, he wanted to watch a horror movie. Everyone knows a guy only suggests this so the girl will hug him when she's scared. Okay, Luca. I like your way of thinking. He chose The Conjuring 3, so I had to binge watch part 1 and 2 in one night. It was so terrifying, but I was willing to do anything for Luca. D-Day arrived, and I spent hours picking out the cutest outfit. But then I arrived at the movie theater to see that Wesley and Aubrey were there too. Seeing my surprised look, Luca said, "Oh, I invited Wesley and Aubrey. It's gonna be a fun double date." Did he just say double date? Aw, so it's still a date. What a relief. He didn't mention to me before that Wesley and Aubrey were a couple. Phew. All the jump scares in the movie did get me to constantly hold onto Luca's arm. You'd think I'd be happy about this, right? But no, I wasn't. Why? Because I wasn't the only girl holding his arm. Aubrey was too. No, I'm not kidding. Hello? Wasn't her boyfriend also sitting next to her? Thank God the movie finally ended, as watching Aubrey clinging onto Luca was even creepier than the movie. After that, Luca suggested we go for Mexican food. I happily agreed. Only Wes and Aubrey tagged along too, of course. Then just before we ordered drinks, Wes received a call from his mom and had to leave. So the three of us were left having dinner together. It was an awkward atmosphere, as Aubrey kept bringing up all these inside jokes with Luca, while I sat there clueless and feeling like a third wheel. Well, that sucked, but at least I'll have some time alone with him on the ride home to make up for this, right? But then Aubrey latched onto his arm and in her sickly sweet voice asked, "Oh, it's so late out. Luca, you're driving me home, aren't you?" Luca turned to look at me awkwardly. Well, I didn't want to make a scene, so I said, "Don't worry, I can call my friend. She works right around the corner and her shift's about to end." Yep, that was a big fat lie. Anyway, he smiled and then they left, leaving me there all alone. I called an Uber and headed home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about how there was something fishy about their relationship. But then I got a text from Luca. "I had a great time today. I was wondering if you'd like to be my girlfriend? X." What? I had to rub my eyes and reread it. OMG. It really said girlfriend in the text. So that means Luca and Aubrey are just really close friends. That's all. I smiled while replying yes to him. So from that moment on, we became an official couple. It was awesome. Well, except for one same old problem. He always brought his friends along. Every day. You see, Wesley and Aubrey went to another high school nearby. When I first met them, I thought Luca was just giving them a ride home because of the rain. But turns out, he drove them every freaking day. They often hang out afterwards also. So it meant that Luca and I never had alone time, not even half an hour. But that wasn't the worst part. Since Luca and I became official, Aubrey's become even bolder than before. For instance, one time at the park, Luca was eating a hot dog and got some mustard on his face. I laughed so hard and told him to stay still so I could take a picture of his cute face.
But then Aubrey just turned to him, took out a tissue, and wiped the mustard away. And that wasn't all. She even drank from his cup, fed him snacks, and often gave him these googly eyes. You must be wondering how she could just blatantly flirt in front of Wes like that? Well, that girl really knew how to blindside him. Sometimes she kissed him on the cheek or stroked his hair. Ugh. So who did she actually like? Wes or Luca? I decided to do a test to find out. So I cuddled up close to Luca and leaned my head on his shoulder. And as expected, Aubrey was glaring at me with jealous eyes. Then, as she twirled a strand of her hair around her finger, she asked him, "Luca, Wes is busy this Friday, and I can't miss my dance lesson. Could you take me there and wait around till class is over?" Luca looked awkward, but not knowing what else to say, he muttered out, "Yeah, sure." Ugh! Now she's being too much. I needed to show her that Luca wasn't interested in her, and that she needed to back off. I know, that sounded a bit mean, but seriously, I needed to make a stand, or else I could lose my boyfriend. So on Friday evening, after Luca drove Aubrey to her dance class, I called him and said that my bike had a flat tire. Yeah, I may have punctured it myself, but it did the trick. He immediately picked me up and drove me home. Then I asked him to stay as Mum was making her signature lasagna. He couldn't say no to my mom, so he texted Aubrey to tell her to go home by herself because he was busy with me. Success! The next day, the four of us hung out at the cafe. Luca noticed Aubrey looking a bit tired, so he asked, "Hey Aubrey, are you okay?" "Oh, it's nothing. After dance class, I walked home and it rained all of a sudden. And I didn't bring an umbrella because I thought you would bring me home, so I got drenched." I glanced at Luca, and I could see he was feeling really guilty. After chatting a bit, I went to the restroom to freshen up. That's when I caught Aubrey dabbing powder on her face to make her look paler. I couldn't believe it. That's so not cool. I needed to confront this big fat liar. Do you seriously think guilt-tripping Luca will make him love you? I don't have to make him do anything, 'cause he already loves me. With a shocked look, I spluttered out, What did you just say?" "Oh, didn't he tell you? Luca and I used to date, but then I got tired of him and broke up with him. He was so devastated. Now, seeing him with you, I realized I made a mistake. He should be with me." My God, I couldn't believe what she just said. How could he hide this from me? I couldn't contain my anger anymore. "You're just a psycho who likes to play dirty tricks all the time." Then I stormed out of the restroom and bumped into Luca. "Did you just yell at Aubrey? Don't be so mean. She got sick because I hung out with you yesterday." Ugh, just great. Now Luca only overheard me screaming and thought I was the meanie now. But then I realized Aubrey was right. Luca was clearly still in love with her, because if he wasn't, he would have asked for my side of the story first, before defending her so quickly. "Luca, I think we should break up, as you clearly still have feelings for Aubrey." Then without letting him say anything, I brushed past him and left. The next day, I decided to wake up early and go for a run, to try and clear my head. But as soon as I opened the door, I saw Luca standing there. I acted like he was invisible, and was about to walk away, but he grabbed my arm and said, "Please, Michelle, at least hear me out." So we sat on the porch, and Luca opened up to me. Turns out, it was true that Luca and Aubrey used to date, but they argued all the time, so he ended things with her, and they stayed friends. He didn't mention their past relationship to me because he thought it wasn't a big deal, as it's all over now. He said that after I broke up with him, he spoke to Aubrey to figure out what had happened between me and her. Then she confessed that she was still in love with him and was only dating Wesley so she could be around him. Luca rejected her, and she started crying, which caused her makeup to smudge. That's when he realized I was right about her faking being sick, and he made it clear that her sneaky behavior meant they couldn't be friends anymore. "Michelle, I'm sorry. I should have seen what she was doing and put you first. I promise it won't happen again." Poor Luca. I couldn't stand seeing him looking so gloomy. To be fair, all he did was just trying to be a good friend to Aubrey, He deserved another chance, right? So, smiling, I gave him a big hug. From that moment on, things between us were great again. Wesley eventually found out that Aubrey was only using him to get close to Luca, so he broke up with her. Our love story was surely a bumpy ride, but it was all worth it, 'cause I truly love Luca. And I also love how he cares about his friends and wants to spend time with them. So I only asked him for some alone time every Friday. Talking of Fridays, I can't wait for this one, as Wesley told me that Luca's prepared something special for me. Eek! I'm so excited! Sorry guys, but you won't know what it is, as my story has to end here. Maybe next time!
On my very first day of high school, I showed up in my extreme goth girl attire as every other day. I felt good, but unfortunately, the teacher didn't appreciate my look, as she gave me this disgusted stare and blurted out, "How peculiar." Excuse me? So how do you define normal? How come being your true self is abnormal, but it's totally fine to live a fake, boring life just to fit into this judgmental society? The whole class gasped and stared at me. As for the teacher, I'd rendered her speechless. I guess word got around, as at recess this red-haired goth boy smiled at me, then said, "Hey, it's Miranda, right? Do you want to join my group?" Well, no need to ask twice. This guy was cute. And everyone in this group was goth too. This was where I belonged. They share my views on how the media's unattainable standards of beauty are fake, and how pathetic everyone is for striving to look like mass-produced dolls. Ugh. I like them. Actually, I didn't have many friends. You see, as soon as I discovered my true identity at 13 and started dressing this way, my old friends ditched me. People are always so quick to judge and don't gel well with others that are different. It's so lame. But whatever. Those bland blenders could never understand my effort to stand out and be true to myself. The only girl who stuck around was Isabel. She's been my best friend since we were 6. And my black lipstick and chokers didn't scare her off. My parents just thought I was going through a rebellious phase, so they let me do what I wanted. Only my older sister Harper was bitter about it. Oh, please! Biologically and technically, you are not a goth. You're an American who likes the gothic style. Jealous much? You see, Harper was your standard girl next door type. Just like everybody else. Yawn. Whatever. As it's her business. I don't care. But please don't force me to be like her. Ugh! Okay, back to school things. From that day onward, I joined the goths. They were all very cool. Especially the red-haired guy, Ralph. The more time I spent with him, the more I knew we were made for each other. So one time, I confided in Isabel about my feelings for him and told her I was planning to ask him to be my boyfriend. Are you sure? It's just you haven't known him long and you don't know how he feels about you. Oh, bless. Isabel was being her usual sweet, caring, worried self. But come on, this was a sure bet. It's okay, Izzy. I'm the coolest one, not only in my group, but also in this school. There's no way he can turn me down. No. Ralph's answer cut right through me without any hesitation. I haven't even finished my love confession. Ouch. Seeing me dead still and mouth wide open, Ralph continued, "Look, Miranda, your style is so cool, and I know you're one of us, but honestly, whenever I talk to you, I think it's just so tasteless. Besides, I'm already dating Errand, so we should just be friends." Tasteless? What did he mean, tasteless? And OMG, Errand? Unbelievable! Her goth makeup and outfits were no way near as good as mine. What did she have that I didn't? Furious, I stomped home, rushed to my room, and screamed into my pillow. On hearing this, Harper hurried in and asked me what was up. I needed to talk to someone, so I blurted it all out to her. Wow, she raised her eyebrows. Rude. Still, she paused, scratching her chin. Uh-oh. I know she always does that thing whenever she's about to say something mean. You know, that Ralph guy does have a point. I mean, instead of spending 3 hours a day applying endless layers of makeup, you could use that time to learn how to be less boring. She shrugged. What? Shut up! Get out of my room! I furiously pushed her out and slammed the door. But, come to think of it, what if the other kids stopped being friends with me? And not because of my look, but due to my tastelessness? Nah, that can't be the case. Pfft, Harper was just being her usual ridiculous self. So I stayed loyal to myself throughout high school and continued to live life my way. No one can make me change my mind, ever. Yeah, I know senior year is important, which is why I made a conscious effort to attend the college enrollment fair. After a while of wandering around, I found myself drawn to the social science section of one university. This was it. This is what I wanted to major in. This was so exciting. I'd finally found something else amazing besides the goth lifestyle. That night I asked Harper to take a photo of me to send with my application file. She gave me this dirty look and replied, "You really think they'd want to interview a student looking like they belong in Dracula's castle?" No, she did not just say that. How disrespectful. Why do people care so much about appearances? You pick someone due to their caliber, not the surface. Well, if looks are not so important, why don't you just quit being angry, get changed, and just take a simple photo? Harper raised her voice. Ugh, arguing with her was pointless. So I ran back to my room and locked myself in there for 2 whole days. Ugh, I hated this world. I had a lot of thinking time, which made me realize I do really want to major in social science. So I decided to listen to Harper, remove my makeup, fix my hair, and borrow her clothes for the picture. Oh my God! No, I can't even look in the mirror. I looked horrible. But Harper thought otherwise. I told her to just take the dumb photo. But she ran off and dragged along my parents, who cooed and clapped on seeing my new look. You look so beautiful, honey. My mom held her chest. Were those tears in her eyes? Oh, man, this was so lame. This wasn't me. I'm not some insignificant, boring-looking girl. Ugh! As soon as Harper took the photo, I darted toward the door, desperate to return to my goth look. Please, Miranda. My parents both grabbed my arms. You look so much better this way. But this isn't me. If I don't stay goth, then I'll be losing myself. I shook them off. A few weeks later, I got a reply from the university. I had got through to the online interview stage. Whoa! But this time, I wouldn't change myself. During the interview, one professor asked me about my social experiences, such as part-time jobs or social volunteer services. I hadn't done any. I'd thought of that once in a while, but due to my goth look, I didn't get to work anywhere. I admitted that to the professor and proudly announced, being goth is my true identity. A few weeks later, I received their response email. Harper, Isabel, and my parents gathered around me in the living room, but, oh no, I muttered out once I opened the email. They rejected me. I stood up and tearfully ran back to my room, while Isabel followed me. Don't worry. Isabel sat down next to me and rubbed my arm. They have another enrollment in the autumn. So you still have a few more months to prepare. I don't need it anymore, just leave me alone. I must have freaked her out, as she quietly left after that. The next day, I was so bummed out, so I went to see my goth friends. Surely my own kind would make me feel better, right? People are ridiculous, but no one can stop us from being ourselves, Ralph heroically said. Well, I didn't feel any better, but at least there was someone on the same page with me. Still in a frustrated mood, I later on skipped dinner and went straight to my room. Harper then entered my room and talked to me in a serious tone. Stop sulking. I've seen that email and your profile. Here's the ugly truth. They didn't reject you because you're a goth. They rejected you because you're just a bland person with below-average grades and no social experience whatsoever. I threw my pillow at her, demanded she leave my room right now and never come back. But that night I couldn't sleep. Her words were bugging me. I don't know, maybe she was kind of right. I mean, I guess I could do more to help my case, as I knew I really, really wanted to study that major at that university. So the next day I started looking for a part-time job. But everywhere required this gross uniform and decent look. Jeez, come on! I just can't. I felt so terrible being something that I'm not. I was about to give up when Isabel came to me and said, Be strong.
Think about your dream college and your future. She patted my back. This is just temporary, okay? What a sweet friend she is. All right, gotta get back on my feet. I patiently kept looking, and finally, a cafe accepted me as a waitress. Of course, no goth look though. Ugh. One evening after work, I was about to go home when I ran into the goth group. Hey guys! I cheerfully greeted them. What's the event tonight? Noticing their confused look, I said, It's me, Miranda. They burst out laughing. Seriously? Miranda, is it really you? Then some of them pulled out their phones and started taking pictures. My Instagram is gonna love this. While the others kept ridiculing me, this was heartbroken. I thought they were my people. Why didn't they give me even a second to explain? Now it turns out they were the most judgmental people ever. What a toxic group of friends. I wasn't going to waste my time hanging out with them anymore. Lesson learned. Over the next few months, I focused on working at the cafe, and I joined a group of active young people, handing out food for homeless people and helping nurses at old people homes. I'd experienced so many new things, and to be honest, I got used to this mediocre look. Actually, there's this one guy in my volunteer group. He's called Roger, and I may have a slight crush on him. At first, I didn't even notice him, because he looks normal. Basic haircut, t-shirts, jeans, and sneakers. Until one time, in the nursing home, I was struggling with this very bitter and difficult old lady who was accusing me of stealing her slippers. Then Roger, with his gentle nature and soothing voice, slid in and diffused the situation. On top of that, he was an amazing storyteller, as he always mesmerized everyone around, including me. Okay, so looking normal didn't mean someone was boring. Yeah, I know the saying, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, it turns out that saying is 100% true. In early October, Harper helped me apply again. And guess what? I successfully passed the online interview and received an offer email. My family was in seventh heaven. My parents couldn't stop the happy tears. While Harper just proudly smiled at me, and Isabel hugged me tightly. We even went on vacation to celebrate. It was terrific. Now, I still love my gothic look, but at the same time, I love my natural look too. I've realized that identifying yourself by how you look on the surface is nonsense, and so is judging people by the way they look. Having an interesting life and being beautiful is not just about obsessively focusing on how you appear. It comes from within. Wait, is that Roger over there? Oh no, he's coming this way. He's waving at me. Perhaps this is my chance.
My phone beeped with a new message. Emma, I've got something to do nearby, so let's meet there. See ya. It was from Tony, my childhood friend from the orphanage back in Missouri.
Yep, that's right. I ended up in an orphanage after my mom passed away when I was only 4 years old. But things were even worse for Tony and him. They'd been left outside the orphanage door without anyone even knowing who their parents were. And now here I am, on my way to visit his grave, as today's his death anniversary. Time flies. I can hardly believe it's been 10 years already. I picked up some flowers, then drove to the cemetery. Tony was already there waiting for me. I smiled and waved, but my heart felt heavy. Back when we were 14, we'd been joined at the hip, Tony, Thomas, and me. I had a secret crush on Thomas, but I never got the chance to tell him. It had all happened so fast on that day. We were just kids, young and dumb. We'd snuck out to go play by the riverbank. One minute we were splashing each other in the river. The next moment, Thomas was being carried away in the current. I tried to save him, but Tony pulled me back to shore. Even thinking about it now, I still couldn't help but burst into tears. Don't cry, Em. I'll always be here for you. And I knew he would be. Deep down, I knew Tony always had feelings for me. But I didn't feel the same way. After that, Tony drove me home. Seeing my exhausted look, he said before I went inside, "Get a good night's sleep, Em. Remember,
We've got that interview tomorrow. Gosh, I almost forgot. Tony probably thought I was the worst employee ever. And yes, you can guess it. Tony is my boss. After years in the orphanage, he was adopted by a super smart family that had inspired him to strive to become someone important, and he'd eventually built a food startup. Anyway, the following morning, despite still feeling worn out, I had no choice but to put on a brave face to go to work, as I had a marketing team to lead. But as I walked into the lobby, a guy bumped into me. He helped me up and frantically apologized, explaining he was in a rush. I looked up and was about to nag him, but wait, why does he look so familiar? In fact, he looked exactly like... It's you! I stammered, but I couldn't even finish my sentences because he'd rushed into the lift and the doors had closed. I must have been seeing things. Honestly, throughout the whole interview, I could barely concentrate. Could there be two people looking that similar on this earth? I was lost in thought when the next applicant came in, and it was him! Both Tony and I stared in shock. He was the spitting image of Thomas. But he couldn't be. I mean, Thomas had died years ago. We both were too stunned to say anything until his voice broke the silence. Hi, I'm Dustin, and I'm here to interview for the marketing position. I looked at Tony, and he looked just as confused as I did. But yeah, it wasn't Thomas. This guy was from Illinois and had never even been to Missouri. Okay, so here's Thomas's doppelganger. Fair enough. The interview went well, and even though he was a bit arrogant, he knew what he was doing, so we hired him. When I left the room, surprisingly, Dustin was still waiting for me outside. He offered to treat me to lunch as an apology for earlier. I agreed, as I was desperate to ask him more questions. During lunch, I kept mentioning the orphanage, some of Thomas's hobbies and things he hated, but Dustin didn't even bat an eyelid. I was disappointed, because I really hoped Dustin would actually be Thomas. That night, I barely slept. I couldn't stop thinking about Dustin. It's ridiculous, but I still had a strong feeling that he really was my childhood sweetheart. Suddenly, I got a message from Tony. Saw you hanging out with Dustin. Wake up, Em. He's not Thomas. Ugh, I didn't need to hear that. The next day, I couldn't take my eyes off of Dustin. At lunch, I watched as he put honey on his watermelon, and I almost freaked out. That was exactly what Thomas used to do. Oh my, I blurted out. I then told Tony what I just saw as soon as he sat down, but he just laughed and said, Honestly, tons of people do that. Do you really think that our Thomas could be that arrogant? Seeing that I was still unfazed, he continued. But if you still want to check, just give him a peach. Things can change, but allergies don't, right? OMG, Tony was a genius. He probably was just kidding, but I was super serious. So the next day, I bought Dustin a peach pie to welcome him to the team. But to my surprise, he ate it up with pleasure and seemed totally fine. Okay, clearly I needed to let this go. He wasn't Thomas. End of. But if only things were that simple. And even though I knew Dustin wasn't Thomas, I still felt attracted to him. He was smart and sweet, and so much fun to be around. Eventually, we started hanging out and became very close. We didn't actually make anything official, but we were low-key dating already. However, it was impossible to hide things from Tony. One time, our company went on a team bonding weekend, and we'd arranged a tennis competition. We had to pair up, so obviously I would go with Dustin, but as we're about to go sign up, then Tony came to ask me to be his partner too. My God, it was so awkward. Then Tony said in a very sulky tone, Okay, how about we have a little competition? The winner gets to pair up with Emma. And so they had a swimming race. That's so embarrassing. I knew Dustin couldn't swim, so I started to panic, but he got in the pool anyway. Obviously, Tony won, but who cares? He was acting like a child. I rushed over to help Dustin, who was left coughing and choking on the water. And at that moment, I realized that I was falling for him so much. But since then, there were rumors in the company that Dustin was only flirting with me to get promoted. One morning, we were walking through the lobby together when two girls started whispering about us. So Dustin took my hand and went straight to the girls saying, "I love Emma. What's wrong with that?" Tell me. Go on." At that exact moment, Tony appeared and asked if he could have a word with Dustin in his office. I was so nervous. Now everyone knew we were in some weird triangle, and I didn't like it one bit. Then one of my colleagues overheard Tony telling Dustin that if he didn't leave me alone, he'd be fired. I couldn't believe it. I went to find Tony right away, and before I could even confront him, he said, "Yes, it's true. I asked those girls to start the rumors, and I also asked that jerk to give up on you. It was me. I did it all. I just don't get it, Em. Why have I ever been good enough for you?" "Tony, wait. It's been 10 years. Why couldn't you give me a chance? Why can't you let Thomas go? Some guy who looks like him walks up and you totally forget about me? He's a loser compared to Thomas." "Don't you dare call him a loser," I said. "See? In the end, you still care about him only, not me," Tony shouted, then stormed off. I hated to be in this situation. On the one hand, I truly liked Dustin, but Tony was not only my lifesaver, but also my best friend, who'd stuck by my side through all the highs and lows. What a dilemma. In the end, I decided to have a little space from Dustin, just until things cooled down. Maybe then the rumors would stop and people would quit being so negative about him. But that wasn't to be so. You see, our new product that hadn't even been released yet suddenly appeared on the website of our direct competitor. Someone must have leaked the confidential file. But who? An investigation was opened and all of our computers were checked. You won't believe it, but the IT team had been able to recover a deleted email that had been sent to our rivals from Dustin's outbox. Dustin denied it, and he demanded to check the CCTV. That's how we caught Mike, one of our senior employees, at Dustin's computer sneakily doing something. And to think, he'd put the blame on Dustin. After the truth came out, I went over to Dustin, but he seemed mad as he said, "You think I'm a jerk too, don't you? That's why you've been giving me the cold shoulder." I told him I never believed he'd done it. Then I took his hand. "I'm so sorry. It's just that I've been through some stuff." Then we hugged. Oh my, I'd missed him so much. But the drama didn't end there. The info leaked had caused our company huge losses. We had thousands of meetings, and the stress was unreal. Feeling so deflated, I went up to the rooftop to get some air. Suddenly, I heard Dustin's voice somewhere. He was on the phone with someone talking about some plan to steal our company's products. No way! Without even thinking, I charged over and snatched his phone away to see that he was talking to Mike? Oh my God! Had they been accomplices from the beginning? I was so angry, but actually more disappointed. So I asked him to resign and stay away from my sight. I know I should have exposed him to the whole company instead of letting him go that easy, but I guess my heart couldn't bear to do that. I felt so bad, especially towards Tony, the best friend who's always by my side, while I was busy chasing after a jerk. I lost contact with Dustin after that, and I barely had time to think about it because our company was on the brink of bankruptcy. But one day, I got a call from him, followed by a message saying, "Please don't ignore me. I've got something important to tell you." So we met up the next day at a coffee shop, and as soon as I saw him, I said, "Look, Dustin, I've had enough of your lies. Please just get to the point." Then he replied, "Emma, I admit that I only came to work for your company to steal your ideas. But seeing you and Tony after all these years, and falling for you all over again, well, that wasn't part of my plan." I was confused. After all these years? What are you talking about? Then he showed me his wrist, and he was wearing a friendship bracelet. "Remember this? You gave it to me on my birthday 10 years ago.
OMG. What was going on? I couldn't believe my eyes. I'd given this to Thomas. But then why? But the peach, I continued. He just laughed and said, I overheard you guys' plan, so I made sure to take allergy meds just before. Then he went on to explain that he was Thomas, and that he'd been lucky enough to be saved that day on the river. There was a family who were out in the river searching for their drowned son, but instead of finding him, they found Thomas, and so they kindly adopted him and changed his name to their son's, Dustin. This was insane. Here was Thomas right in front of me, after all these years. And guess what? His adoptive father is the director of our rival company, and so he'd asked Dustin, or should I say Thomas, to come and infiltrate our company. Thomas kept apologizing for it, saying how much it had tormented him, and that he just missed me and had to tell me the truth. My head was spinning. This was all too much. I needed a moment to think it all through. But in the end, we decided that he could help our company by uploading a post to expose the truth. Obviously, as soon as Tony heard about it all, he was furious. He was mostly mad at me because I'd covered for Thomas. He'd even stopped talking to me for a while. But putting that aside, after Thomas's post, things got better for our company. We were able to launch new products as scheduled, and he even contributed some capital to help with our new project. Now our companies are still rivals, but at least it's now a fair competition. As for Tony and I, we eventually made up. He came to find me one day after work and said,
I'm so sorry for how childish I've been. I was just jealous of you and Thomas. I was too selfish to consider your feelings. But you and Thomas, I want you guys to be together. You two are made for each other.
I couldn't stop crying as he said that. It meant so much to me. And guess what? It has now been a whole year since Thomas came back into our lives, and the three of us are back to being the best of friends. Oh, and I should probably add that Thomas and I are engaged. We're so happy, and we're even opening an orphanage together for homeless kids like us. I'm going through many phases, but I finally found peace in life. I guess it all worked out after all.
It's almost the finish line. Just a little more. Come on, Bolt. We can make it. Yes, we've done it again. So, as you can see, the winner was me, Matilda, along with my horse, the heroic Bolt. This is our third win in a row already. Woohoo! It may only be a small hometown race with a modest prize, but it's still gonna go a long way in supporting my grandparents' farm. Now it's time for this guy to rest. Good boy, Bolt. You did amazing out there.
A 16-hand stallion, healthy, glossy coat, and a well-mannered temperament.
Geez, the horse dealers even follow me home now? I took a handful of hay, spun around, and hurled it at him. Go away! I don't want your stinking money. Bolt is not for sale. Right at that moment, my grandpa appeared.
Matilda, that is no way to speak to our guest of honor. I apologize for my granddaughter's behavior. She's a firecracker at times. Teenagers, you know? Anyway, it's dinner time. Please join us for a home-cooked meal right this way.
Huh? Guest of honor? Who could he be? Oh my god. It turns out the man was none other than Mr. Allen, the chairman of Allstellar Inc. Corp., the annual sponsor of my family's farm. I turned beet red and apologized profusely for being so rude to him.
No problem, kiddo. I like your spirit. I thought it'd be a good idea to check out the farm I'm sponsoring, and I stumbled upon the racing tournament. Oh boy, you sure can race, can't you, girl? Not many can handle a wet track at that speed. We have our reservations about her skipping school and competing in such dangerous races. But Matilda's insistent that she was a part of this family, so it's her responsibility to help us, her only remaining relatives.
Mr. Allen gave me this thoughtful look, then said,
How about this? The annual sponsorship for your grandparents' farm stays the same, and on top of that, you can move in with me and have a proper education.
Did I hear him right? I gasped. But who will take care of my grandparents? Sweetie, we still have our health. We can run this place just fine.
That's right, Maddie. Take your chance. Opportunities like this don't come twice.
But what about Bolt? I can't go without him.
Bring him along. I have a small horse farm where he can stay. You can help around the stables, and we can call it payment for your school fees, alright?
Well, I guess that's settled then. Yay! 1 week later, Mr. Allen sent his driver to pick me up, and the new chapter of my life started from here. Wait, oh my god, this can't be it! Mr. Allen said it was a small horse farm, but this place, it's enormous. As soon as I stepped out of the car, a girl my age rushed over and hugged me. Matilda, you're finally here! I'm your new sister, Judy. I greeted her back with the widest smile. She seemed so sweet. She led me over to the front porch where Mr. Allen and a woman were waiting for me. It must be my new mom, but why was she giving me such a strange look? Before I could even introduce myself, she turned and walked into the house. Maybe she wasn't feeling very well? That evening, I dined on a lavish meal. We chatted lots, and the Allens seemed fascinated by my childhood life at the farm, especially Judy with her 10,000 questions. Sis, so, is it true that you have never seen your parents? Yeah, my father passed away in an accident before I was born, and my mom also left me when I was an infant. On hearing that, Judy gently comforted me while Mr. Allen smiled and said,
Now, besides your grandparents, you also have us, your second family. You got a sister, a new dad here, and also your caring mom. Right, darling?
Mrs. Allen flinched and dropped her fork. I immediately leaned over to ask, Mom, are you okay? But to my surprise, she just yelled at me. Don't call me that! Feeling flustered, I stared down at my plate. Had I done something wrong? Over the following days, I tried my best to get closer to Mom, but I was always met with coldness in return. One time, seeing Mrs. Allen was resting outside, I brought her an iced coffee. But as soon as she saw me coming over, she placed her hat over her face, pretending to be asleep. On another occasion, I complimented her dress, but she just tutted at me, then walked away. I really wanted her to like me, but it was useless. She clearly detested me. But at least I still have Judy and Dad by my side. Judy tried reassuring me that Mom was a good person and that she just needed a little more time to get to know me better. As for Dad, not only did he send me to a top school, but he also encouraged me to follow my passion. All the afternoons when I got to watch horse racing and bet on the winning horse with Dad were so much fun. And as I watched the horses gallop past, a thought crossed my mind. What if Bolt and I were the one on that track, winning the race and bringing back the huge prize money for my grandparents? I couldn't stop thinking about this. So one time, on the way back home from a race, I asked my dad if I could compete, and he didn't even hesitate to reply.
Why not? You do have a talent. How about give it a go?
Oh God, this was so exciting! My foster dad was the best, and I couldn't wait to give this my all and make him proud. After that, he immediately got me a personal coach and a dedicated team of trainers and groomers for Bolt. I'd never felt so happy, and Bolt had never looked so good. Everything was great, except that Mrs. Allen still seemed to have an issue with me. Every time I packed for practice, she always frowned and muttered stuff under her breath. Maybe she's irritated about the fact that an adopted child like me was receiving much more than I deserved, or something. But anyway, whether she liked it or not, with my talent, I'll quickly rise to be a brilliant rookie. One morning after practice, Judy came up to me and said, Matilda, can you teach me how to ride a horse? It might be a little scary for a first-timer. Are you sure you want to try? Yes, please. If I know how to ride, I can spend more time with Dad just like you do. I looked at her angelic, hopeful face. How could I say no? So I helped her onto Bolt and taught her how to hold the reins and do a few commands. It went smoothly at first, but suddenly Mrs. Allen came out of nowhere and shouted, What are you doing? Judy, come down right now. Startled, Judy misjudged her movements and tumbled off Bolt. As we both rushed over to check on her, Mrs. Allen pushed me aside, which caused me to fall onto my butt. Do you know how important legs are to a ballet dancer? Are you intent on ruining her future? Before I could reply, she shouted, What an incompetent kid! Get out of my sight! Ugh, it was just a few scratches and bruises. Why was she so serious about it? And incompetent? Huh, fine. I'd show her what an incompetent kid can do. From then on, I got my head in the game and continuously won several small and medium prizes. I sent most of my winnings to help out my grandparents and kept the rest to treat Judy and myself to something nice. One day after dinner, Dad called me into his office and told me that the two biggest races of the year, the Grand Shields and the Royal Silverford, were coming up in 2 weeks and he'd already signed me and Bolt up for them. But the two races were only 1 week apart. That would be too much for Bolt, cause the latest race seemed to wear him out. I mentioned this to Dad, but he was adamant that Bolt would be able to manage it. I didn't want to let Dad down, but I didn't want to hurt Bolt either. I needed time to think about it. As I left the room, I gave a petrified jump. There, in front of me, was a stone-faced Mrs. Allen. She grabbed my arm and yanked me into another room. You can't compete in the races. These are different from your usual amateur events. You're not good enough, and you'll only embarrass our family. Were you eavesdropping on my conversation with Dad? Listen, you're not my mother, so you can't tell me what to do. I will surely join it. Then I stormed out of there. Early in the morning of the first race, I was going to the stables to check on Bolt when I caught two of Mrs. Allen's servants sneaking out of there. What were they doing here? I went to investigate and... Huh? This is not Bolt. What has Mrs. Allen done to my horse? Right at that moment, Mr. Allen walked in with the vet. I told him what I'd just seen and he muttered out, "That woman dares to get in my way, huh? I'll make sure she'll pay for it this time." Then he turned to me and said, "Leave it to me. I'll find Bolt. Go get some rest and prepare yourself for the race." I'd never seen him this stern before, so I just nodded in concern. Despite all the drama, I still managed to bring home the Grand Shields Championship title. It's amazing, right? However, I couldn't fully enjoy the victory as one thing was still lingering on my mind. Mrs. Allen has been absent for the last 4 days. Could it be that Dad has done something to her? Hey, Judy, did Mrs. Allen say she was going somewhere? Dad told me that Mom's been so stressed lately, so he arranged for her to go to Aunt Anna's villa to rest. Oh, it seemed like what Dad said at that time was just an expression of anger. At least I had one less thing to worry about. You see, my main concern at the moment is Bolt, as his health has clearly deteriorated since the previous race. The vet says he's doing fine, but through Bolt's heavy breathing, I know something isn't right. A week passed by and the day of the second tournament finally arrived. While the vet was checking on Bolt before the race, Dad suddenly pulled me outside. "We must win today's match. I expect a lot from you." I had a bad feeling about this somehow, but I still nodded and assured him that I would do my best. The race was about to begin. Everything's in check. I'm ready for it. But wait, why does Judy look so flustered? Maddie, Mom was not on a trip. The storage room. Dad locked her there because she found out what he was up to. He's doping Bolt. What is she talking about? Could it be that the vet who came in earlier was drugging Bolt then? But no way! If there's anyone wanting to harm me and Bolt, it's Mrs. Allen, not Dad. Listen, Mom only swapped Bolt the other time to protect you. Before I could shape what happened, I saw a burly man covering Judy's mouth and pulling her away. Then a voice whispered in my ear, "Only one game left. Just keep your mouth shut and do it properly. If you lose, I can make things very uncomfortable for you and your grandparents. Got it? Now get on the horse." A chill ran down my spine. I felt like I was gonna vomit. How could the caring, kind man I called Dad turn out to be such a fraud? The signal of the match rang out. Ugh, what should I do? I couldn't let that wicked man get what he wanted. So I closed my eyes and stayed put. "What do you think you're playing at? Run! Run now!" Mr. Allen went crazy and rushed over to me. But right at that moment, the organizer appeared and asked me to take Bolt for a health check. They led Bolt away and brought me and Mr. Allen to the office, where I was shocked to see a frantic-faced Mrs. Allen cuddling Judy. It turns out that Judy had freed her mom from the room Mr. Allen had locked her in. Then she'd come straight here and handed the organizers incriminating paperwork of her husband's corrupt doings. Mr. Allen glared at me and shouted, "I had to raise you without any benefits just because of her. Now it's your turn to pay me back." Then he immediately charged at me, but Mrs. Allen quickly covered for me and pushed him away, and one of the race organizers restrained him. Don't you dare harm my daughter. Huh? Daughter? Mrs. Allen looked at me with tear-soaked eyes. Sweetie, please give me a chance to explain. I fidgeted the coffee cup in my hand and stared at the ground while Mrs. Allen told me her side of the story. Turns out she really is my biological mom. Can you believe that? After my dad passed away, in her vulnerable state, she fell for Mr. Allen's forced charm and fake words. But he soon showed his real face and heartlessly separated me and my mom after they married. That's why she could only secretly send money to our farm under Mr. Allen's name. Mom also recognized me from the beginning, but she didn't say anything as she knew that Mr. Allen adopted me just to get Bolt, a horse that could help him win some shady bettings. If I knew the truth and rebelled against him, he would harm me. I'm so sorry for all these years, especially these past few months. It has been extremely hard for me, having to treat my dear daughter so badly. But that was the only way to push you away from him, from this rotten house. I didn't want you to be in danger, just like how your real dad was when he worked for him. Please forgive me, Matilda. Tears kept rolling down my cheeks. Turned out, I always had a mother protecting me. Mom pulled me in for a tight hug. Mom! I hugged my mother tightly. I really love and miss you. Please forgive me. I looked up to her and smiled. Of course, yes. I'm more than happy to have you back in my life, Mom. And the best sister I could ever wish for, too.
Wow, this Florida beach resort was the epitome of luxury. Hi, I'm Dakota, the beloved and only daughter of Hardy Balmer, the world-renowned wine billionaire. But I don't know why. We have this huge fortune and Dad still makes me study and always rushes me to get a job. Well, no way that's gonna happen. So for now, let's just enjoy this gorgeous place and this finest wine, shall we? FYI, there isn't a wine brand in the world I haven't tasted. I can distinguish them all easily with just one sip. Chardonnay versus Riesling? Piece of cake. Let's see if there's anything interesting going on in the world.
Wait, what is this? There must be some mistake.
How can Daddy be bankrupt? I called him repeatedly, but all I got was the busy signal. Something's wrong. I rushed to the private helicopter to return to our mansion. What's happening? Why are those men carrying away our valuable furniture? Then Nanny Maria ran out to me in tears. She told me Daddy had disappeared and all he'd left behind was this wooden box. I rummaged through it but only found some old notebooks and a certificate of ownership for a farm winery. Oh well, Dad may be bankrupt, but at least I still have this vineyard to live off. Let's go check out my newly acquired assets then. This place looks huge. I wonder how much money it made a month. I looked around and then wandered into an enormous wine cellar. Curious, I touched some wine barrels when suddenly someone's voice snapped at me.
Stay away from them. Who are you?
I'll have you know that I own this place, so I'll do whatever I want.
Have you lost your mind? Get out, now!
He suddenly grabbed my wrist and dragged me outside.
I furiously screamed and people started to gather around. Listen up, my name is Dakota, Hardy Balmer's daughter, and from now on, I'm in charge around here. I showed them the certificate of ownership as proof, but they didn't seem to care. Only an old-looking man came to shake my hand.
Welcome, Miss Balmer. I'm Jack, your father's long-standing companion. Come inside. My son James will show you around in a bit.
Okay, finally, someone showed some manners. Oh, I miss hanging out with my friends. I should have been at Fashion Week right now, not here in this lousy farm.
Get up, couch potato. You have a vineyard to visit.
Ugh, it's that rude guy again. It's too hot outside now. No way I'm making my way out there. So I shooed him away and continued staring at my phone. James then threw the stupid map of the winery at me and left.
Thank God, he finally left me alone.
After a week of lounging around and being waited on by Nanny Maria, I eventually longed for fresh air. Remembering the map James gave me, I decided to check out the place. First stop, the vineyard. Wow, it's so big! But why did they leave the soil so crackling dry? Let's see, where's the sprinkler?
There we go. But as soon as I turned it on, a scowling farmer ran over and immediately turned it off.
Hey miss, This is not your toy.
What's the attitude? They're my employees, but have the cheek to act this snootily to me? Harvest this in 2 weeks. To keep the sweetness of the grapes, no one waters them. Why is this James guy everywhere? I'm the daughter of the wine billionaire. I didn't need any preaching on how to run my farm.
Days after that, I came to the farm to pluck up the grass,
Trim and fertilize the plants. But I kept getting shooed out. Those awful farmers were so disrespectful. Fine, I needed to show them who's the real boss here. That night, I asked Dad to gather everyone in the communal dining room and declared I would fire some of them for their disrespectful attitudes. But they just gave indifferent looks. How dare they? Didn't they know I could just sell this place and make them all homeless? But then Jack handed me a contract signed by my daddy, stating that due to the blood, sweat, and tears they'd all put into this place, no one has the right to fire them or sell the farm. Jack also gave me other documents. Seemed like due to my family's bankruptcy, the farm had not been doing well. If nothing changes, it might be dissolved. What? So the only property Dad left me was also on the verge of failing? I yelled at them, then do something to sort it out, now! Suddenly, everyone got up from their seats and glared at me with anger. My head was spinning around. Feeling panicked, I rushed outside. I sat by myself, hugging the wooden box Daddy left me in bewilderment. I flipped the notebooks and was surprised to find a letter in the bottom of the box, in which Dad told all about how from the day Mom passed away, he'd put all the effort into this farm and became a successful entrepreneur.
I used to believe that compensating my time for work to provide you with a wealthy life would be enough. All this actually did was create a greater distance between us. My darling Dakota, I'm so sorry. My only hope is that you'll see as much beauty in this vineyard as I do.
If only Dad was here now. How can I deal with all these troubles and challenges ahead? I burst into tears.
They meant no harm.
James' voice startled me. I quickly wiped away my tears. He sat beside me and offered a wine-spludged handkerchief.
This isn't just some random farm for these people. It's also their home. Don't accuse them of not trying. This farm means far more to them than it does to you.
I was just...
This is when we should all stand together. Don't let your selfishness threaten the future of this whole winery and everyone involved.
Even though I hated his guts, what he said did make sense. Maybe I had been neglectful of my responsibility for this place. If this winery was the most precious thing to my dad, then I want to put it right, for him. James smiled gently, putting his hand on my shoulder.
That's settled then. We're all gonna revive this place.
He then left after telling me to show up at the cellar at 5 a.m. the day after. The next morning, while walking around, James told me everything about temperature control and wine brewing. Growing up, Dad would always pass on this wine knowledge to me at the dinner table, and I actually remembered them. He even took me to his wine tasting sessions, and that's how he discovered I was gifted with a great sense of smell and taste buds. Even James was impressed with my talent and said I was born to work in this industry after letting me taste some samples. The next step in the process was much harder than I thought. It took me a whole day to memorize all the different varieties of grapes and how to sort them, but I still messed it up. How come there are so many ripe stages? I was frustrated and was about to leave when Karen, my instructor, called me back. You have to take it slow. Wine takes time and we have to be patient. Okay, fine. I'll try. As I was sorting, I got to chat with the workers, and it turned out they were quite friendly and even helped me out a lot. It was true that these workers really treated this place like their home and cherished it here. It had been more than 2 weeks, and I was harvesting the new crop with everyone. Thanks to the tips in Dad's notebook, with a pinch of my own creativity to it, James and I were in the process of creating a new line of wine. I was confident that this would help revive the winery. I was checking stuff in the cellar when James rushed in with a leaflet in his hand.
Hey Dakota, this is our chance.
Wow, so this town was hosting an upcoming wine festival. If our winery could win something, we could gain lots of orders for this season. The next morning, I prepared all the documents to register for the King of Wine contest. While waiting for the interview, I strolled through the showroom and tasted the previous winning wines. Wow, they all have unique tastes. Since I had my eyes closed to appreciate the wine layers, I bumped into a handsome guy and accidentally spilled red wine on his shirt. Oh, I'm sorry. No biggie, it's just a small stain. Oh my, he was such a gentleman, which made me feel even more guilty. I was about to ask for his contact so I could make it up for him later when the organizer called me for the interview. My eyes were just looking away from him for a sec, and he'd already gone. Anyway, it was a blessing the interview went well, and our winery was eligible for the contest. I decided to treat myself to a coffee before heading back. But at the counter, I realized I didn't have any money on me. Oh no. I forgot my wallet. I'll pay for that. Wait, it's him, the guy I spilled the wine on. Turns out he's Danny, and he might be young, but he's in fact a skilled wine critic who even held the position of vice president of the city's wine association. More surprisingly, he's a fan of my dad's and adores the wines he created. After chatting with him, I came back to the farm to tell everyone the good news. They were all very excited and started preparing for the competition right away. 2 weeks before the competition, the organizing committee sent over a few people to do some preliminary assessments. And guess what? Danny was also here, being a part of the inspection team. So after the inspection, I invited Danny to stay and share some knowledge about wine brewing. And fortunately, he's free for a few days and was pleased to stick around. Yay! I excitedly told James the great news, but he responded with no interest. That's not exactly good news. Why? Oh, I see. You're jealous of him, aren't you? What? Me? Jealous? What does he even have for me to be envious about? Well, he's handsome and also exceedingly knowledgeable about wine. And people seem to like him. Wait, where are you going? I haven't finished. Whatever, no one needs him, as we have Danny here now. Such a charming gentleman. For the next 2 days, Danny kept trying to make time for me. Yes, just the two of us. Gosh, he's so romantic. I could spend hours with him. Dakota, you're the most special girl I've ever met. Hey, dinner time. Ugh, another would-be perfect moment ruined by James. He seemed to go out of his way to come between us. He sat in between us in the dining room, saying it was his favorite seat. Then, he followed us into the vineyard and said he was checking the quality of the grapes at 11 p.m. For real? Such a third wheel, and he's so cranky toward Danny. Hello, the guy's trying to help us here, so why the grumpy attitude? Later that night, I was passing by the kitchen when I overheard James and his dad. Should we start now? Definitely. The big day is coming up, or else we won't make it. Dakota is busy being all lovey-dovey with that jerk. She doesn't need to know this. What? Are they planning something behind my back? And then, something absolutely horrible happened the next day. When Danny and I arrived at the cellar to pick up the competition wine, we stepped into a sauna. What is this? Why is the wine cellar so hot? Someone must have tampered with the room temperature. I rushed to check the wine. Oh no, the heat had removed the last 2 notes and made it too sour. I fell to the ground and started sobbing. Danny tried to comfort me. He told me not to worry as he'd introduced some big clients to me, then he had to leave to prepare for the upcoming competition. I looked at the barrels in sorrow, but then remembered something. My dad also set the heat too high once and found a way to filter and ferment it again to tone down the sour flavor. I'm sure it's somewhere in the notes he left. I hurried back to my room to search through the wooden box, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Someone definitely was messing with me. Oh my god, who else could it be? The conversation between James and his dad came to mind, so I furiously went to look for him. Seeing James, I couldn't control my anger and shouted, "It's you, isn't it? You adjusted the wine cellar temperature. You stole my father's notebook. You've been planning to sabotage me for a long time, haven't you?" James acted confused, but before the snake could blurt out anything, I stopped him and said, "Get out of here, now!" He gave a defeated nod, then left without a word. Tomorrow is the day of the contest, yet I don't have any wine to enter. I picked up the letter my father left me and felt like a loser. Maybe I'm just not fit for this. Right at this moment, James pushed the door open. "Dakota, look! I told you to leave!" Ignoring my words, James calmly poured a glass of wine and told me to try it. "Oh, this actually tastes pretty good. It's the new wine you created. I stayed up a few nights and fixed its acrid taste. Now we can take it to the contest." I yelped out in joy, then lunged to hug a surprised-looking James. Look at his face, red as a tomato. But remembering how sketchy he was in the kitchen the other night, I quickly let go of him and calmed down. First things first, we had to hit the road now to participate in the competition. Our wine stall attracted a lot of guests and got highly praised by all the judges. When Danny saw us, I noticed how surprised he seemed by my presence with this new wine.
I didn't expect the technique of filtration and fermentation could change the flavor so amazingly. You're really talented, Dakota. Let's take some time to discuss this in more detail later.
I happily agreed, but isn't that technique recorded in my dad's notebook? How did he know it? I left the bar and sneakily followed Danny. Then in a hidden corner, I overheard him talking to someone.
I've adjusted the cellar's heat to destroy everything, but who knew she'd use her father's technique to fix it? I've already taken the notebook away, but she probably remembered them all. Whatever the reason is, her wine is becoming a strong rival. My championship is at stake. Can you just do something?
So, have I been trusting the wrong person? Well, that hurts.
But I'll sure make him pay for that.
I quickly submitted the recording to the judges, and immediately there was an announcement to pause, and the wines were regraded by blind tasting to be fair. And you know what? The new wine I created won the third prize. Okay, so the prize money wasn't as grand, but it'd help us get a decent amount of orders for the next year's crop. I happily went to the podium to accept the award and almost fainted on stage because the awarder was no one other than my dad. I hugged him and sobbed uncontrollably. It turned out that my father was not bankrupt. He just donated all his assets to charity. His plan to pretend bankruptcy was just to help me become more independent and walk on my own feet. It's unbelievable, but I'm not mad at him for it. On the contrary, I feel very fortunate that my father did that to give me a chance to grow up. As for Danny, he was kicked out of the City Wine Association. That's the price to pay for his cattishness. He deserves it. And James, it turns out that the conversation between him and his father was just about fixing the wine, as the two of them discovered the spoiled wine way before I did. Now, the vineyard is my first career, just like it was my dad's. This place is my home, and the workers are my family. Yep, this even includes this cold, cranky guy.
Mom, come here and see what Agnes has done to my dress. Oh no, what now? Look at this, Mom! It's crumpled. This is all your fault. I told you that this requires hand washing. That means by hand. Oh, don't cry, honey. I'll buy you a new one. You can give that one to Agnes. It's yours now. New dress. Happy, huh? Can we go right now, Mom? Then let's have pizza after that. I'm so tired of Agnes's pretentious fine dining dishes. Of course, honey. Yeah, I know. That sure looked like a scene from Cinderella, right? Only stuff like that was a daily occurrence in this house. If I was adopted, then it'd be easier to understand why Mom favored my sister over me. But nope, I am also her actual daughter. Growing up with Jenna as my big sister was a nightmare. She's always been the golden child, while I was treated like a thorn in their side. If something broke, then I got the blame. When Jenna stole my things, then Mom just said I should be flattered. Then there were the birthday parties. Over the years, Jenna had it all. Fairy-themed ones, magicians, a petting zoo, and cupcake towers. As for me, all I ever got was a card with a wrinkled $20 note in it. It was the same thing with studying. If she broke her string of D's with a C, Mom rewarded her with jewelry and makeup. Me? Just one C out of usual straight A's, and Mom'd say, "Oh, why did I even get my hopes up?" Sometimes I do wonder if all this shabbiness is because Jenna's always been pretty and popular. She's basically a mini-me version of Mom. While I guess I'm more reserved, and I don't really look like Mom. Anyways, despite living in a house full of darkness and unfairness, I still have my own passion, which is culinary. To be honest, I'm addicted to those TV cooking shows and always try to find ways to follow them. My dream is to become a head chef in a 5-star restaurant. At school, Jenna always blanks me. She hangs out with this group of girls who are all obsessed with the same things she is, such as makeup, trendy clothes, and TikTok. Jenna does look gorgeous, so it's not surprising that boys usually buzz around her in the hope of catching her attention. Anyway, forget Jenna.
as I have my best friend Ruth right here. Girl, I swear to God, if I were you, I'd tear up some of her clothes just for my own relief. Nice idea, I said while playing with my tray of food as usual.
It looks so good. Very appetizing.
Startled, I looked up to find a pair of dazzling eyes staring back at me.
Hi, I'm Roy. That's very neat-handed of you.
Before I could say anything, he winked and turned away to his table. That was close, or else he would have seen my tomato-red face. Looks like someone's on the hot guy's radar. Shut up. He was just being friendly. But no, that night when I got home, Roy in fact did message me. And we had a really long chat. He even asked me to join him for lunch the next day. Yay! This was so exciting. I'd entered the canteen to find Roy was already sitting there waiting for me. But I quickly spotted Jenna's group passing by, and the last thing I need is trouble from my evil sister. So I was actually thinking of walking away. But right at that moment, Roy grinned and waved over at me. OMG, that hot boy over there is waving at you, Jen. A girl flattered Jenna before I could even answer Roy. Jenna quickly fixed her hair, then smiled awkwardly at him. But he walked straight past her and over to me.
Here, for you. What kind of first-class dishes do we have today?
I smiled at Roy and had no choice but to sit down with him, ignoring Jenna's furious glare. Despite the awkward Jenna situation, lunch with Roy was amazing. We started hanging out loads more after that. He's cute, funny, and very supportive towards my culinary dreams. Then one day, Roy handed me a cupcake with a frosted heart on it and asked me to be his girlfriend. Yippee! This was so exciting! So, of course I agreed, but only on the condition that we kept our relationship low-key. I'd never had anything of my own before, so if my mom and sister didn't know about us, then they couldn't tarnish it, right? Falling in love is a magical thing. I was just so happy and full of life all of the time. Even doing chores for Mom and Jenna didn't dampen my mood. I thought you were only into cooking. So what, you like laundry now? Pfft, don't tell me you want to be a fashion designer next. I ignored her and carried on with what I was doing. Actually, I ignored all of Mom and Jenna's mocking jibes. The truth was, I was way too happy to let them bother me anymore. Soon, Jenna's 17th birthday party arrived, and this time she insisted on having it at this trendy restaurant in town. All of our relatives and her friends were invited, but I decided not to go. It's not like anyone wanted me there anyway, so I didn't think it'd matter. But to my surprise, on the day of the party, Jenna knocked on my bedroom door and begged me to come. Please, Agnes, I want you there on my special day. It won't be the same without you. Then she passed me a bag and left. I opened it, and inside was the most beautiful dress. Okay, so Jenna being nice was strange, but I must admit it felt good to feel wanted for once. So it looks like I was going to the ball. Wow, the party was insane. I'm talking banners, balloons, a whole booth devoted to presents, a menu only serving Jenna's favorite foods. I was sipping my drink, feeling awkward, when Jenna addressed the room. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to my 17th birthday party. Now, there's a very special guest here that I'd like to introduce to you all. It's my new boyfriend, Roy. I watched with horror as Roy appeared out of the crowd and let Jenna link arms with him. Huh? What? Why was my boyfriend with my sister? I glared straight at him, but he couldn't meet my gaze. This was terrible. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Panicked, I rushed outside to get some air. Everything of yours will soon be mine, no matter how well you hide it. I turned to see that Jenna was standing there, a huge smirk on her face. How could she be this shameless? I shoved past her and went to find Mom. She was shouting at the waiter to bring out more drinks. I went up to her and spluttered out what Jenna had done and how upset I was. Jeez, stop making such a fuss about it. Jenna's your sister, so just be happy for her. Besides, Roy is far more suited to her than you. Oh, that's it. I can't stand this selfish family anymore. I'm leaving. Yeah, go. Disappear just like your no-good father did. That night I showed up at Ruth's house with a bag of my stuff and a teary face. But I knew this could only be temporary, so I still looked around for somewhere else to stay. And eventually I applied for a job as a grocery cashier at a 24/7 gas station. Well, at least I had shelter. One night, a drunk man walked in. He didn't look so good. Nothing could lighten a person's mood better than great food, right? The store was quiet, so I took some of the ingredients available and used them to prepare a delicious-looking dish for him.
Thank you so much, sweetie. I'm Keith. You have a culinary talent. If you want a better opportunity, come find me.
Before I could thank him, he left. Let's see. Bar owner? I wasn't old enough to work in a bar, though. I spent the next month juggling school with work, life, and oh boy, was it exhausting. But when I asked for my salary, my boss laughed in my face, saying that since I was only 16, he could only pay me for far less hours than I'd worked? What? That wasn't fair. I worked my butt off on sometimes 12-hour-long shifts. But when I complained, he threatened to report me for stealing food from the store. Ugh, I'd only taken expired food that couldn't be sold anyway. Feeling bummed out, I just quit, and then left. I wandered around the street for a while, then looked up and found myself standing in front of that man's bar. Well, I had nowhere else to go, so I stepped inside and there was Keith, but, he looked so different.
Other than this bar, I also own a fine dining restaurant uptown. If you want, I'd love to train you to become a chef there.
Whoa, this was so amazing that I cried with joy. In order to be able to stay overnight at the restaurant, I told him that my parents had passed away and I'd run away from the orphanage. And the man agreed without questioning me twice. Time passed by, and you know what? I loved working at the restaurant. As for Keith, he's such a kind-hearted man. We grew so close, and he became like a father to me. I guess we were two lonely people who helped each other. So it made sense when he asked to adopt me. Then one busy evening, I was taking food to a table, but then I stopped dead. Sitting there were Jenna and Roy. On seeing me, Jenna sneered out, "Oh, you work here? Now that explains why my appetizers were gross." Roy looked embarrassed and begged her to be quiet, which only made her worse. Then seeing what was going on, Alistair, the restaurant supervisor, came to my defense. But it only made Jenna even more heated. "Isn't the customer always king? Why are you defending that dumb girl?"
Miss, this is a fine dining restaurant. Please mind your manners. Agnes here is not only a very talented chef, but she's the owner's daughter, which makes her my boss. So I think I'm within my rights to defend my superiors.
Jenna rolled her eyes at me, then walked away in anger, not forgetting to reply, "Just you wait, Agnes." Then, seeing my glum face, Alistair invited me out for ice cream after work. Keith happily told us to go and said he'd close the restaurant. As I was licking my ice cream, I noticed people around us shout, "Fire! Fire!" So I pulled Alistair's hand and ran after them. As the flames came into view, my heart sank when I realized they were coming from... It was the restaurant. Oh no! Keith was still in there! Without giving it a second thought, I charged in there to find him. It was so smoky and impossible to see, but I couldn't give up. Suddenly, I started to go dizzy and lightheaded. Then an arm grabbed me and pulled me out. It was Alistair, and standing next to him was... Keith. Phew. A few days later, the police called Keith. They'd found the culprit who started the fire. As soon as I walked into the police station, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Jenna. But most surprisingly, when Keith saw my mom, they both turned pale and gave astonished looks. Huh? Did they know each other? So yeah, turns out Keith's mine and Jenna's actual father. When Dad was young, he hadn't built his career but just spent all day in the kitchen. So he was always despised and scolded by my mom. In the end, he couldn't take her belittling of him anymore, so he left. Only unbeknown to him, Mom was pregnant with me at the time. So the story she said about Dad running off with his mistress was all lies. I got it now. She despised me because I took after my dad, not her. As soon as Jenna realized he was our dad and he was rich, she put on her Little Miss Sweet act and begged for him to be her dad again. But he just gave her a stern look and said, "That fire of yours could have killed us all. Now you have to live with that." Then he took my arm and led me out of there. I always believed my life would one day be better, but I never imagined it'd be as good as this. I now have an amazing dad, a job I'm passionate about, and people who generally care about me by my side. It just goes to show that everything works out perfectly in the end.
I arrived to find that he'd turned his bedroom into a mini theater, complete with scented candles and glistening fairy lights. He handed me a bowl of popcorn, and as we nibbled our way to the bottom, a carefully written letter came into sight that said,
"I've been in love with you ever since we were little kids. I've held back my feelings as I didn't want to ruin our friendship, but I can't deny them any longer. So, will you be my girlfriend?
How can he be so gorgeous and sweet and...
Hey, dummy. You writing that cheesy stuff again? Just drop it already. Let's go prank Mr. Weasley.
Okay, I'm coming. If only what I wrote came to life. That's my best friend since childhood, Adrian. And as you can see, I have the biggest crush on him. But he only sees me as a bro. How ironic. I'm pretty sure if I confessed my feelings to him, he'd weird it out saying it's gross and stuff. So I just wrote my dream reality down in my novel and posted it on Wattpad. I even used a pen name. I couldn't risk Adrian finding out cause, help, awkward alert? Anyway, it's easier this way, as I didn't want my parents to find out either. Yep, they weren't exactly supportive of my writing career. They wanted me to become a lawyer and take over the family firm just like my dad, and his dad, and blah blah blah. They made me study hard so I'd get into this prestigious law school, but it was just so dull and my heart just wasn't into it. One day, as I was sipping a macchiato at my favorite coffee shop, a group of girls walked in chattering excitedly about a book by the new author, Agatha C. Huh? Did I hear them right? Curious, I approached them and politely asked to see the book and... oh my god, it was my pen name right on the cover! I scanned through the first few pages and saw my words. Did this mean my book was published? Ouch! So all this was real! So, someone must have given my book to the publisher. Then it's gotta be Mrs. Jensen. Yes! She is the most respected writer and has loads of connections in the publishing industry. And lucky me, she was my mentor. Hi, Mrs. Jensen. I'm just calling to say I'm so grateful for what you've done for me.
Cecilia, calm down. What are you talking about?
The book, of course. Mrs. Jensen, my book got published thanks to you. Right?
You're talking nonsense, young lady. I've barely started reading your book. So how could it have been published without my notice?
What? So, Mrs. Jensen didn't send it? Then, who did? What do you mean you can't disclose their identity? It's my book!
Miss, all I can say is that the person who brought it here claims to be the author of the book and chose not to reveal themselves by publishing it under a pen name. We, as the publisher, are legally bound by that, so I can't help you any further.
What on earth was he talking about? Some random person stole my book and my pen name? I needed to prove they were both mine. Aha! My Wattpad page! I tried to log into my account to show the director, but access denied? Oh, no. Someone must have messed with it. I was gonna use it to apply for a writing scholarship at college, and now it was all gone! As if that wasn't bad enough. I suddenly received an email from the writing competition I'd applied for, saying they denied my entry due to plagiarism of a Wattpad page. My Wattpad page! Ugh!
Sup, bro? What's with the King Kong face? Oh, come on. You'll be less of an ugly duckling if you smile more. See?
My gosh, could he just stop being like that for once? He made it very clear we had zero chance of being together. I got it, but he didn't have to rub it in my face like that. Fine then, he'd never have to see me again. After that, I was determined to transfer to another school by the next semester, one that would appreciate my writing talent. Somewhere like Eastwood Academy. It's a school full of literature records. Besides, I happen to know someone there. Lewis, the president of the literature club, and also an uprising star in the writer world. He's not only super talented, but incredibly nice too. He'd help me loads with my novels. But getting into that school would be tough. So, every day, with my game face on, I buried my head under stacks of books, while Adrian tried his best to distract me. One time, he told me to ditch class and go see the new Batman movie with him. I'd waited months for that movie. But no, I'd got to get my head in the game. Adrian didn't give up that easily, though. Only, right at that moment, the teacher appeared behind his back.
yanked his ears, and gave him a ticket to the detention room. There went the Batman movie for him. Another time, he came up with a prank for Mr. Jones, the PE teacher who made him run 10 laps around the school for being late. But, sorry, the new Cecilia ain't got time for any of his childish stuff. So when Adrian gave me Mr. Jones's phone and told me to hide it away, I just calmly handed it back to him. As Mr. Jones returned to the teacher lounge, he saw Adrian pouring some liquid into his tumbler, and that's how Adrian got himself 2 detention tickets. After that, Adrian finally noticed that I had been acting differently.
Cece, what is up with you? You keep ignoring me. Are we not friends anymore?
Don't call me Cece. I'm still mad at you, okay? So, yeah, I want to transfer to Eastwood Academy. You know, Lewis's school.
Oh, I see. Stop the act. I know it already.
What? Did he know that I like him? Had he read my book?
You like Lewis.
Huh? Oh. Phew. But hang on. He really thought that? And was he annoyed? Interesting. Yep. In fact, he asked me out to dinner this Saturday.
Really? Okay then. I'll go with you. Can't trust this guy.
And so, Adrian tagged along. He kept complaining about how I dressed up all pretty for Lewis, and how he had the nerve to be late. So, this is what he's like when he's jealous? Kinda cute though. As Lewis arrived, he gave me a big hug, and I could feel Adrian's glare behind my back. I sat close to Lewis and giggled at everything he said. He immediately got what I was trying to do, so he acted along, putting his arm around my shoulder and slightly stroking my hair. At one point, I even helped Lewis take a fallen eyelash out. And oh boy, Adrian couldn't help but lunge forward to separate us. Right at that moment, I heard a familiar voice from behind.
Cecilia? And who are these young men? Lewis?
Oh, hi, Mrs. Jensen. What a small world. You know Lewis too? She didn't answer my question. Instead, she gave me a stern look, then dragged me outside.
Cecilia, what are you doing with that no-good traitor?
You mean Lewis?
Who else? He was heavily criticized and boycotted by the whole writers' community. I strongly suggest you give him a wide berth.
Oh my. I had no idea Lewis had such a bad reputation. He was always so kind to me, unless this was just an act because he wanted something, like my novel. What if he was the one who stole it? This was not good. I rushed back to my table, quickly said goodbye to Adrian, then dragged Lewis away. Did you or did you not steal my book?
What? No! Did Mrs. Jensen tell you that?
Turns out, he used to be Mrs. Jensen's brightest mentee. Then he fell in love with her daughter Demi, and they started dating behind her back. But then out of the blue, Demi suddenly broke up with him. Heartbroken, he cut all ties with her and her mom. But Mrs. Jensen took offense at this and had been on his back ever since. Gosh, now my head was spinning. I had no idea who to trust.
Come to think of it, back in my mentee months, I also lost one of my manuscripts. I sort of ran into a dead end with that one, so I didn't do any digging, but it can't be a coincidence, right? It must have been Mrs. Jensen who stole them.
No way! She's an incredible writer. Why would she do something like that?
There's no better explanation for this. Don't worry, I've got a plan to expose her for the stinking thief she is.
He then called the publisher, pretending to be some big-shot producer, and asked them to arrange a meeting with the author of my stolen book, as he'd like to produce a high-budget movie based on it. Brilliant, isn't it? We arrived at the rendezvous in awesome disguises and waited for this to play out. Our tension rose as the footsteps got closer. And then, standing at the door was, well, Mrs. Jensen. How could you? I trusted you!
Cecilia? What's going on? Oh, drop the act. There's no movie. We only planned this trap to expose you for the book thief you are.
Mrs. Jensen persistently denied our accusations and claimed she was only here because her daughter arranged a big surprise for her. Then Lewis and Mrs. Jensen started quarreling with each other and it all got messy. Stop! Both of you, please just stop!
Demi, please explain yourself.
It was me, okay? I stole your book, Cecilia. I saw it on Mom's desk. I'm so sorry. I don't understand. You don't need to steal someone else's hard work. You already are an excellent writer. No, Mom, I'm not. I've tried so hard to meet your expectations, but I just can't. I didn't want to disappoint you, so I stole your mentee's work. Including yours, Louis. I was so ashamed of myself I couldn't face you after that. I'm so sorry. Louis let out a long sigh, then pulled Demi in for a hug and comforted her. Right at that moment, Adrian barged in and grabbed Louis's collar. You jerk! You were flirting with Cecilia a day ago, and now you're canoodling with another girl right in front of her? Adrian, stop! It's not what you think. Then I led him out of the restaurant. Turns out, he saw me leaving the house with Louis looking all weird, so he decided to follow us here. The truth is, I don't have a crush on Louis. I was just trying to see if you think of me as more than just a friend.
Well, I do like you. Like, a lot. But I don't want to risk our friendship. I can't bear the thought of not having you in my life, so I figured it'd be best to treat you as one of the guys.
Guess what? I like you too, idiot. So, what do you say?
Yeah, let's give it a shot. But you have to promise me if things don't work out, we'll still be friends, okay?
Promise. Then we pinky swore just like when we were little kids. Only this time, he pulled me in for the best kiss ever. Finally, my book's mine again. And guess what? It has just become the #1 bestseller novel according to the New York Times. Ah! This calls for a celebration. Adrian, will you help me with the guest list for the party?
Sure, sweetie. Who do you want to invite?
Now, let's see. There's my parents, who were so impressed with my independent work that they're now letting me follow my writing dreams. There's also Louis and Demi. Aw, they make such a cute couple. Demi decided to start over with her writing career, this time without the pressure from her mom. And with Louis's help, she's got a bright future ahead. And last but not least, Mrs. Jensen, who's now fully supportive of her daughter's career and her relationship with Louis. I guess it's a happy ending for both my novel, me, and everyone I care about. I entered the apartment to see 4 sets of eyes gawping at me. Hang on, I know Ned and Philip from my math class, and the girl currently giving me a snooty look while twirling her hair around her finger was Jessica. Well, I didn't actually know her, but her wealthy and snobbish reputation preceded her. Then lastly was that emo kid. What was his name again? Deciding to break the uncomfortable silence, I said, "Oh, hey, so guess you guys are also in detention?" No one replied, though they surely heard me. Whoa, okay. This atmosphere was tense, and I thought I'd always been the awkward one. Honestly, I don't even know why I'm being made to do this weird detention. All I did was accidentally and poorly throw the dodgeball in the gym teacher's face. Then, when I was about to apologize, my tongue slipped. But, aren't you supposed to be the toughest since you're the gym teacher? I mumbled. Naturally, she was livid, so I ended up in the principal's office, and he handed me a piece of paper with an apartment address on it and said,
"Go here for your detention. You'll stay here until you've learned your lesson."
Huh? What type of unspecific instructions were those? Before I could ask him any more, he shooed me out of his office. Now, here I am in this random apartment with these untalkative kids. As I looked at them, I couldn't help but wonder what they'd done to end up here, especially when Ned was an excellent student. Did he make the wrong move in the chess club or something? We continued the whole staring at each other in silence routine. But then the door burst open and stormed in Gwen, our school's resident carefree tomboy. She sneered out, "Good evening, babies." Great. Now I was stuck sharing a living space with a girl renowned for playing pranks such as toilet papering the principal's car and filling the biology lab with live frogs. But
Seriously, how were we at her truancy level? Let's see who we have here. Gwen rubbed her hands as she walked around and stared at us. Princess Jessica? Oof, how come? She raised an eyebrow and grinned sarcastically. Just sit down and shut up. Gwen gave him a dirty look. This isn't basketball. You're not the captain here, jock. Then she squared up to him. Ned turned pale. Jessica rolled her eyes, and the emo boy, well, he was busy sketching something and clearly chose to ignore our existence. We'd only been here for less than an hour, and the last thing we needed was a fist fight, so I stepped in between them. Pulling a wry face, Gwen said, "What's this? Little Miss Friendly?" Look, we're all stuck here and we don't know for how long, so let's at least try to be civil. Let's try talking it out. So, I'm Ashley, and I'm here because of a misunderstanding with a gym teacher and a dodgeball. Geez, nobody cares. I can't believe I have to be here with these people. Jessica stood up and left. Pff, I'm with Miss Popular on this one. Ned sneered before he also left. And the emo boy, too. Then Gwen rasped and disappeared. There was only Philip and me left in the room. He was meant to be handsome and stuff, but looking at him now, I didn't think so. Ugh, this awkward silence was insufferable. This was just like that movie, The Breakfast Club, but much worse, and in much longer time. Who on earth had to pack clothes for detention? I had no idea how long I had to stay here for. So I decided to go to bed. I walked into the girls' room to see that both of the beds next to the window were already occupied. Bummer. They'd taken the best spots. I reluctantly got into the only bed left and hoped that tomorrow wouldn't suck as much as today had. The next morning, I woke up to yelling. Huh? I rubbed my eyes and yawned. It was still far too early. I went out into the corridor to see what was going on and saw Jessica and Ned arguing over the apartment's only bathroom. Jessica wanted to apply her makeup, while Ned really needed to go. Then Philip watched on and butted in on occasion to say something dumb. Why don't you use some of your nerdy mathematics to solve your problem? The only reason you need to spend so long applying makeup is because you're ugly. Ooh, burn! Philip laughed. Suddenly, the bathroom door slammed shut. They rushed over to it and tried opening it to no avail. 10 minutes later, the emo kid stepped out. Jessica screamed at him. How dare you! My personal stuff is still in there. I watched on, wide-eyed. OMG! These people were ridiculous! How was I meant to live with them? In the end, we eventually came to an agreement about the bathroom's rule. It was first come, first serve, but each of us could only have the throne for a max 15 minutes. Being in such a small space with people I barely knew was always going to be problematic, but not having our phones as a distraction made it so much harder. We had one TV, but there's only one lousy channel on it. No one cleaned up, no one seemed to get along. Ugh, seriously? When will this end? All of the constant dirt and arguing was driving me nuts. But then the final straw was this one time when I was washing my face, the cleansing foam accidentally got into my eyes to wipe it out. But to my horror, when I opened my eyes, so I quickly reached for a towel, I saw myself holding someone's sock instead. Yuck! After that, I gathered everyone and threw the sock onto the floor and said, "We need to sort out order, as I can't live like this anymore. It's gross." Jessica snorted. "Who are you to boss around? No one cares what you think." Before I even had a chance to say anything back, Ned piped in that Jessica was just a dumb rich girl who never lifted a finger. Then Gwen jumped up to her feet and started shouting for no reason. Philip gave me this smirky know-it-all look that made me want to scream. Then he actually lobbed a basketball at me, which almost took my head off. Then, ignoring the others, I started shouting at him. The only one who stayed quiet was the emo boy. "You aren't even that pretty. In fact, I've seen more attractive slugs."
I heard Ned say to Jessica. That was a bit much, wasn't it? I mean, it was obvious Ned only teases Jessica because he has a huge crush on her. Jessica huffed as she tossed her hair behind her back, then stormed off to her room. Man, this place sucks. At least lunchtime had arrived, so I made myself a delicious-looking burger, then quickly went to the bathroom. When I returned, I couldn't believe it. Philip was taking a bite out of my burger. I screamed at him, but then he shrugged, then said he'd make me a new one. And like a decade later, my replacement lunch finally arrived, and Philip was smiling at me strangely and watched on as I bit into it. Ew! I lifted up the top of the bun to see a raw piece of beetroot. Ugh. I was so fed up with everyone that I went to bed super early that night. Only when I woke up the next day, both Jessica and Gwen burst out laughing at me. I hurried to the bathroom and checked out my face. Oh no. Turns out someone had drawn on my pillow, and now I had ink all over my face. I had to scrub my face for ages to get it off. Then Philip wouldn't quit laughing at me. I knew he was responsible. Ugh! Such a jerk! And on the other hand, we also had the emo kid that I was seriously getting sick of. He never said or did anything. Instead, he just sat there, usually wearing his stompy boots and looking all moody. I mean, why wear those sweaty-looking boots when he's stuck inside? It was about time he spoke up, so I came up with a prank to get him talking. When the emo kid was in the shower, Ned and I filled his beloved boots with mayo. A little later, I heard some loud thump. Then the emo kid did a weird walk across the room with his foot covered in mayo, while clutching one of his boots. "Have you lost your mind?" he shouted. And not gonna lie, I was intimidated by this other side of him. Then out of nowhere, Jessica appeared. She turned to me and shoved my shoulder. "That was too much, don't you think?" "Oh, no, you didn't. I wasn't gonna let someone like her speak to me like that and get away with it." So I struck a defensive pose and glared at her. We ended up in a stare-off when suddenly I felt arms pulling me back. It was Philip. I tried flailing free of his grip, which caused him to lose his balance, and he accidentally elbowed Gwen. "Oh, you're done, Jock!" Soon, Jessica and I were pulling each other's hair, and Gwen and Philip were shoving each other. It was mayhem. "Stop! All of you!" It was the emo kid. He glared at us with rage. "You're acting like immature brats!" Well, that was unexpected, but I guess it worked, as a few seconds later, we started cleaning up the mess we'd made. We knew something needed to change, so at dinner, we all sat around the table and tried to sort things out. The others were all staring down at their food and not talking, so I decided to go first. So, I'm here because I don't always react well to certain situations. I don't know, I guess I find it hard to make friends. I trailed off. Then Ned spoke up. "The only word my mom seems to know nowadays is study, study, study. I feel like all I am to her is a grade. So when I got a B in English Lit, I ripped it up in front of the teacher. That's the story." Jessica flicked back her hair, then said, "Try having all the money you could ever want, but the most neglectful parents ever. I bet they still haven't noticed that I've been stuck here with you losers for days now, just because I told some girl her skirt was hideous. I was doing her a favor. Poof." Then Philip blurted out, "My father wanted me to be strong and manly just like him. I don't want to be like him, but I'm worried I will be, and that I won't be able to do anything about it. So I skipped basketball practice, got into an argument with coach and my dad, and now I'm in the weirdest detention ever." Gwen sneered. "Least your dad's around. Mine does month-long disappearing acts. And my mom's dead. Oh, and I'm here because I put paint in some clown's locker. Serves them right for bad-mouthing me." Her words were followed by an intense silence. Awkward. But I felt like I understood everyone a little better now. Oh, but hang on. The emo kid hadn't said anything. "Hey, you.
I looked at him. So, what's your story? He shrugged, and I didn't think he was going to talk, but then in a quiet voice he said, I'm Stan. I never knew my dad. My mom isn't around, so I live with my grandparents. I'm here because I ignored the principal, but only 'cause I had earphones in. Oh, I muttered out. Look, I'm sorry about your boots. I'll help you clean them if you like. Stan nodded. Jessica was right. I had been a bit harsh on him. Then Ned gave this awkward smile and said,
Jessica? I know I've been a jerk to you, but it's only because I like you.
Jessica didn't do so much as flinch. She still kept studying her nails. Probably because having boys smitten over her was already a part of her daily routine.
Well, I might like someone too.
Phil stretched his arms behind his chair.
I guess I like winding her up.
He looked directly at me. I felt myself blushing, and I had this weird fluttering feeling in my stomach. But why? My heart started racing. Now what was I meant to do?
Good night. Parting is such sweet sorrow that I shall say good night till it be. Rio de Janeiro! The whole audience burst into laughter. What did I just say? Panicked, I checked the script again. Huh? It did say Rio de Janeiro. Ugh, I know she's behind it. Lisa! She must have messed with my script. You're probs wondering why I didn't run down to the stands and give her a taste of my shoe? Well, it's complicated. You see, Lisa and I used to be best friends. When I was 7, my family moved to this town, and Lisa was my neighbor. Back then, Lisa always seemed lonely, as she didn't have any siblings. Her mom was busy with work, and her dad was away on business. So I often came over to hang out with her, and eventually we became the best of friends. We had so many things in common. Oh, and even her dad was a cop, just like my dad. Lisa never mentioned him, but I know she missed him. But then our 10 years of friendship was recently ruined, just because of some boy. You see, Lisa liked this guy called Brent at school. So being the great friend I am, I tried to help. But Lisa found out that he'd been messaging me and thought that I was flirting with him behind her back. I tried to explain many times, but she refused to listen. So now, I became her reluctant enemy. Her sneaky tricks became commonplace. And on this occasion, she won, as she got the role of Juliet, while I was just a boring maid. On the day of the play, after finishing the final rehearsal, Lisa suddenly walked up to me and smiled. Sorry about the audition. I've been thinking about it a lot and realized how childish I was. Then Lisa handed me a bottle of my favorite juice to make up. Okay, that's strange. Does she have 2 completely different personalities inside her or something? Or did she realize how great of a friend I am not to resent her petty tricks? Anyways, seeing as it was her birthday and all, I happily took the bottle of juice and wished her good luck. However, 15 minutes before the performance, I had the worst cramping pains in my stomach. I sprinted at rocket speed to the bathroom, and by the time I got out of there, the show was pretty much over. And guess what? I hadn't had anything that day, except for the juice Lisa gave me. Unbelievable! She did it to me again! I then rushed into the lounge of the drama club and rummaged through Lisa's bag. Bingo! Inside was a bottle of laxatives. She put it in my drink so I couldn't participate in the show. Ex-best friend or whatever, there's no way I'm gonna let her get away with it this time. Then suddenly, I found a vintage pocket watch sticking out from the innermost compartment of her bag. I held it in my hand and saw that the number 1999 was engraved on it. Why did it look so familiar? Don't touch my father's belongings! A voice sounded from behind me, and the next thing I knew, Lisa snatched the pocket watch from my hand. Why was she angry? I mean, I was the one who got done over, not her. And also, what did she mean by her father? I was still thinking about it when I arrived home, and suddenly saw someone sneaking around outside Lisa's house. Isn't that Dad?
My dad looked around and then placed a beautifully wrapped gift in front of her door. It must be Lisa's birthday present, but why didn't he just hand it to her directly? When my dad came back inside, I quickly rushed over to him and asked, "Hey Dad, do you remember the pocket watch that you love so much? I haven't seen it for a while. Where did you put it?" Dad seemed to be flustered by my question. Then he muttered that he'd sold the watch to a pawn shop. I just nodded, but I knew he was lying, as he treasured that watch too much to ever sell it. Why did he give it to Lisa, then lie to me? Could it be that Lisa is my dad's illegitimate daughter? And the fact that my dad insisted on moving here, was it just so he could be close to his mistress and his child? Ugh! Lisa had stolen my role, and now she wanted to take my dad away from me too. I'd had enough. It's time for me to give her a taste of her own medicine. The next day at school, I made sure Lisa was watching as I flirted with Brent, then linked arms with him. She looked like she was going to explode with anger. Then I told everybody in class that Lisa's father wasn't away on business, and that she only said this as he had another family and abandoned her when she was little. The rumors must have gotten back to Lisa, as the next thing I knew, she was confronting me as I walked out of the toilet cubicle. "How dare you say that stuff about my dad? You're a horrible liar!" Then we ended up in a nasty hair-tugging fight. It was so bad, a teacher had to come in and pull us apart. Then the principal called our parents. Luckily for us, my dad and Lisa's mom decided not to make this a big deal because of our close neighborly relations. Yeah, as if. However, my dad still made me apologize to Lisa and her mom. Ugh. Dad, why do I have to apologize? It's not like she apologized to me for putting laxatives in my drink.
You were wrong to spread those untrue rumors about her. But what were the laxatives about? I thought you two were friends. Since when did you guys become this resentful towards each other?
I wasn't lying. They're the truth. Are you defending Lisa over me just because you feel guilty that she's your secret daughter?
Christy, what did you say?
I explained how I knew about the watch and therefore I'd figured out his secret. He was silent for a long time, then sighed and said,
"Actually, Lisa's dad was a colleague of mine. He was a good man who worked hard at his job. We had this difficult case involving a notorious criminal gang and, unfortunately, her dad passed away while on duty. In his last moments, he gave me his pocket watch as a memento and asked me to look after his 4-year-old daughter, Lisa. Her mom and I couldn't break the heart of that little girl, so we said her father was away from home on business and would return when she'd be 18 years old. As for me, I would pretend to be her father to occasionally send gifts and letters to her. When you and Lisa were 7, I decided to move here in order to easily take care of her. And as you know, I gave her that pocket watch, her father's last memento."
But why did you lie to her like that?
Lisa was too young at that time to accept such an ugly truth. Her mom and I didn't have much choice either. I was expecting her to get used to it and stop waiting for her dad, but it's true that we didn't expect things to be like this. On her last birthday, I continued to play the role of her father and left a present at the door with an apology for not being able to come home due to a busy schedule. But we know we can't keep this from her anymore. It's heartbreaking to see her longing for her dad so persistently.
So, it turned out that all my speculations were wrong. Not only that, but I also spread false rumors and hurt my friend. Oh God, what had I done? How could I put this right? That night, I sent Lisa a long text apologizing, but she didn't reply. So the next morning, I waited at her door to go to school together, but she just walked straight past me. Looking at her distraught face, my heart filled with remorse. I just entered the school gate when someone tapped me on the shoulder.
"Want to go see a play with me tonight?"
Brent held out 2 theater tickets. Oh, it was for the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. I was desperate to see that. Back when Lisa and I were still friends, we talked about going to see it. Wait, Lisa, that's right! So, I lied to Brent that I was busy and told him to ask Lisa to go with him instead. Lisa looked so thrilled that Brent had asked her out. Now my conscience was clear. Lisa and Brent would realize they liked each other and finally get together properly. Then she'd forgive me, right? Anyway, I did have an essay coming up, so I went to a quiet coffee shop and studied there till late. But when I got home, I walked through the door to smashed up ornaments and the sound of my parents arguing. So you've been lying to me and Kirsty for all these years? How could you have a secret child the same age as your daughter? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? What's going on? Did she know about Lisa? I quickly ran to stop her. Mom, it's not what you think. I thought so too at first. But you have to listen to Dad. Those lies may fool you, but they can't fool me. Lisa is his illegitimate daughter. That poor girl came here and told me. I tried reasoning with Mom, but she was too upset to listen. With a slam of the door, she left. Dad plopped down on the couch and gave a solemn sigh. I sat next to him, comforting him that maybe it was Lisa's misunderstanding. Dad, we have to tell Lisa the truth. I'll approach her first to test the water, and then when she seems to be emotionally stable, you will come and talk to her, okay? The next day, as soon as I arrived at school, I immediately went to look for Lisa. There she was, standing by her locker with her arms folded. I walked over to her, but before I could say anything, she shouted, "Stop acting as if you're that noble! I know Brent only invited me to the theater because you told him to. Why do you wish to embarrass me so much?" Then Lisa burst into tears. "If my dad was still alive, he would protect me from mean girls like you." I gaped at Lisa. She already knew everything? But if so, why did she tell my mom the day before that my dad was also her dad? I stood there, refused to move until she told me the truth. Eventually, she blurted out that on her 18th birthday, she saw my dad leaving a gift in front of her house. Suspecting something was up, she mustered up the courage to ask her mom everything. It devastated her to learn that her long-awaited dad was just totally a made-up lie by my dad. She was full of rage towards my dad and me, so she lied to my mom so we'd know what it felt like to have a broken family. I was furious. How dare she do this to my family? But as she sobbed out an apology, my anger faded right away, and I only felt so sorry for her instead. What she had gone through was really unbearable. I hugged her tightly and the pair of us cried our eyes out. When we both calmed down, we decided to have a frank talk with our families. I told Lisa I didn't mind sharing my dad with her, as he loves her like his own daughter anyway. But in return, Lisa needed to apologize to my mom and explain everything to her so she'd come back home. So finally, my mom has returned, and our two families are at peace again. I'm so sorry. I was out of my mind. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mom. Oh, I mean, Mrs. Lamont. Everyone burst out laughing. I also took the opportunity to give Lisa's mom a big hug and called her my mom, just like Lisa did. We were all chatting away happily when the doorbell rang. Lisa and I both went to open the door and saw Brent standing there holding a bouquet of flowers. He had this bewildered look on upon seeing us both here. But you know what? It doesn't matter which one of us he was looking for. There's no need for a boyfriend right now, because I already have my best friend right here. Or should I say, my sister?
Sarah, it's about time you got married. What are you talking about? Get married? Not a chance. I'm still in school. Oh, give me a break. Marrying a rich guy will bring you more money than school ever will. Mom, I'm not like you. I actually like school. Now leave me alone. That was the conversation between my mom and I about 2 months ago. Well, look at me now. Here I am staying in one of the most luxurious villas in Boston. My name's Sarah, by the way, and I'm 16 and in high school. My life hasn't ever been normal. For starters, I don't have a dad, and my mom is totally irresponsible, choosing to spend any money we have on partying and men. Of course, she doesn't even have a job, so we rely on her latest fling to help support us.
My mom has never really cared about me, so I just stay out of her life as well. She can do what she wants as long as I can do what I want. And what I want is to study really hard so that I can have a better life than hers. But as usual, she intervened in that plan, and 2 months ago she forced me to quit high school and get married. Obviously, I refused, and I even went on a hunger strike for a few days. But then one day she said, "Tomorrow, our two families will meet. If you don't rock up, I'll go to your school and tell them you're not coming back. But if you come, you can still go to school, at least until the wedding." Ugh, school. She's using what I love most against me, again, to force me to follow all of her ridiculous plans. Fine, I agreed. I mean, it was just a meetup. It's not like they could pressure me to get married right away, right? So the next day, I followed my mom to go meet Adam's family. I was shocked when I saw him. He was wearing a mask that covered half of his face, and he just sat there, not uttering a word, just staring at me without even blinking. Honestly, it was so creepy. His parents seemed nice, though, and they explained that he'd been in an accident when he was a kid, which had left him with a severe burn scar on his face. So he wore the mask to avoid scaring people off. I could see him watching me, waiting for my reaction. So I tried to smile back. I felt so bad for him. But at the same time, there was no way I wanted to spend my life with this guy. So I decided to put my plan into action. All I had to do was get his parents to disagree with the arrangement. So I acted as clumsy as possible. I wanted to give the worst first impression ever. As soon as the wine was poured, I leaned over and knocked his mom's glass all over her white dress. My mom looked mortified, but I didn't stop there. I ate with my hands and dropped food all over the table and kept chewing with my mouth wide open. But no matter how hard I tried, Adam's parents still seemed to like me, and I could see him slightly smirking at me. What did a girl have to do to put this family off? Clearly they were desperate. Near the end of the meal, they started discussing the engagement. Apparently, I'd move into Adam's family house so we could get to know each other. Then, if I could help Adam to feel less insecure, they'd let me finish high school before we had to get married. So didn't that mean they just wanted a friend for Adam? Someone to keep him company? It's not that bad. I guess I can do that then. So after the engagement, I moved into Adam's mansion. After school every day, I'd hang out with him and try to cheer him up. I'd play him my fave music, show him some epic movies, even try telling him jokes. But still, he barely smiled. He wasn't interested in anything I liked. Then one day I was struggling with my science homework when he passed by and decided to check out what I was doing. Suddenly, he started chatting away, and I realized how much he loved chemistry and physics. He even offered to help me with my assignments. He was so passionate about those subjects, and this was a win-win, because I'd finally found something we could discuss. He even started opening up to me. It was a start. I began to feel more comfortable around him. On one sunny day, I even asked Adam if he wanted to play a game of badminton. At first, he refused, as he didn't like being outside, but I wouldn't stop begging until he said, "Fine. Have you played this game before?" "No." "Okay, then let me show you." I was so excited to teach Adam. Although I'm not great at hand-eye coordination, I'd been playing badminton a lot at school, so I felt pretty confident. Finally, I'd found something I was better at than him. Ha! Okay, so I spoke too soon. After a few missed serves, he somehow mastered the shuttlecock and kicked my ass. Why did you say you've never played this before? 'Cause it's the truth. I don't believe you. Adam just shrugged and then left me lying on the ground. He had to be bluffing. It's impossible for anyone to be that good the first time they do something. Ugh. But it was fun, I guess. Adam was growing on me, but I couldn't be around him 24/7 as I had classes to attend. And no cap, I was extremely happy that I still got to go to school. Plus, at school something incredible happened. One day I was walking through the schoolyard when I tripped over a can. Just as I was about to faceplant on the ground, a hand appeared and pulled me back up. We made eye contact, and I swear it was love at first sight. His name was Brian, and he's super handsome. From that moment on, we texted nonstop every day, and it wasn't long before he asked me to be his girlfriend. And of course I said yes. I was smitten, but I obviously had to hide it from Adam and his parents. One night, I was on the phone with Brian when suddenly a text from my mom arrived. In fact, ever since the engagement, she hadn't even been in touch. Maybe she was too busy spending the huge amount of money that Adam's parents had given her. Sarah, I really need some cash, just around $500. Can you please ask Adam if he can lend me it? What? How have you already spent the money his parents gave you? Stop asking questions. Just get me that money, okay? Ugh, money, money, money. All she cared about was money. She didn't even ask if I was okay. I want to ask. Can you get me some money?
Money? For what?
I need to pay for my tutoring class. I haven't had money to pay for the past few months.
How much do you need?
About $500.
Okay, I'll tell the butler he'll give it to you later.
Phew. That was easier than I thought. But Adam didn't ask twice about it. Was it because that amounts just nothing to a rich guy like him? Anyway, at least he'd said yes. That would shut my mom up for a bit. If only. A few days later, she texted me again. This time she wanted $3,000. Was she kidding me? I just ignored her. But she kept bombarding me with texts and calls. It went on for days. She wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't give in, though, until this photo was sent to my phone. It was of me and Brian holding hands and clearly in love. Turns out my mom had been so desperate for the money, she'd turned up at my school one day to talk face to face, and that's when she saw us together. She then threatened me and said that if I didn't get her the money, she'd tell Adam's family what I was up to. This terrified me, because then I'd have nowhere to go, and I wouldn't be able to go to school anymore. I couldn't let that happen. I had no other choice but to keep asking Adam for the money with my lame excuses. From buying books, to a relative who was ill and needed treatment, you name it, I'd use it. Every time I asked Adam, he looked at me like he was worried about me and asked if I was okay. This made me feel even more guilty, because it seemed like he genuinely cared about me. To make up for it, I'd bake him cookies, and even knit a cute sweater for him as a birthday gift. But then, a few weeks later, he asked if we could talk. As soon as I walked into his room, he threw a bunch of photos at me. They were all of me and Brian. I couldn't believe it. Did my mother betray me? But that's not the case. He told me how he'd had someone follow me because he felt I'd been acting weird. Not only had he discovered I was dating someone, he'd also found out that I'd been lying about the money and giving it to my mom. He was so disappointed in me.
Please leave me alone. I don't want to see you anymore.
I was so worried I'd be kicked out of their house, but no one mentioned anything. His parents still chatted to me at dinner, and they seemed happy enough. Only Adam avoided me, which of course made me feel terrible. The only one I had to lean on right now was my sweet Brian. So after dinner one night, I decided to go over to his place. I really needed some comfort right now. But when I arrived outside, through the window, I saw another girl in his room. They started kissing, and I thought I was going to be sick. In a panic, I quickly crawled over and hid below his window to listen in. But aren't you a bit too close with that Sarah girl lately? Don't you dare.
Don't worry, Pumpkin. It was all just for you. I noticed that she lives in a big mansion with personal drivers and all. Her family must be filthy rich. So I just wanted to be a good friend and help them spend those money. You know, and maybe that way I could get you the new Chanel handbag that you always want.
Oh, really, honey? So, how's it going?
Well, a dud. Seems like she's the stingy kind of rich girl. Ugh, keeping every single nickel all to herself.
How was I supposed to believe what I'd just heard? My heart was shattered into pieces, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stood up and put my face against the window. You're dumped! Brian looked so shocked to see me there, but I didn't wait to see if he had anything to say. I just ran home in tears and locked myself in my room.
Sarah, open the door. Do you know how many days you haven't eaten for? Sarah, open the door. If not, I will send someone to break the door down. Oh, God, are you okay? What's going on?
Nothing. I'm sorry. Sorry for lying to you all this time. I didn't mean to. Suddenly, Adam hugged me and said,
It's okay. Don't cry. Now can you just tell me what happened? In tears, I told Adam the whole story. From being used by my mother to being betrayed by Brian. Perhaps this is what I deserve for lying to you. Actually, if I were you, I wouldn't want to marry someone like me anyway. You're a great guy. As long as you have confidence in yourself and live with a more positive attitude, good things will happen to you, I promise. Even with this ugly face? I looked up at Adam and, oh my gosh, the burn scar on his face. It was worse than I thought it would be. I reached out to touch it. It must have been so painful. Can we start over? Keep helping me, okay? I looked at Adam, smiled and nodded. So after that day, I continued to stay at Adam's house and help him get out of the isolated, self-deprecating life he'd been living. Gradually, his attitude improved, and he even started taking a business course to get ready for taking over his family's company in the future. I also encouraged him to start taking off his mask. Love everything about yourself, including that scar. As for my mom, she's currently being detained for her illegal gambling. Yep, that's what she spent all that money on. She'll probably end up in prison, and even though this isn't what I want for her, she kinda deserves it. Oh, and about the wedding, we postponed it. Lucky for me, both Adam and his parents want me to go to college first and pursue my dreams. Once I graduate, we'll probably start planning our wedding, though, and it'll be truly out of love this time.